Good morning and welcome to the November 24th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. And happy early Thanksgiving. In addition to the usual housekeeping items, which I'll get to, we have a full house today, as you can obviously see. We want to hear your testimony and your input on each of these items if you have it. However, we are going to institute a 3-minute time limit on speakers today. So Karen will be managing that for me. When you see the lights, and to be honest, this is as new to me as it is to you guys, but when you see the lights go red, you're done. Please stop speaking. I think it blinks yellow when you need to wrap it up, and when it's red, your time is done. In addition to that, if you do wish to speak to an item, there are speaker request forms over at the table along the left wall. Please fill out the speaker request forms with the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff located over there. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Today, items 1 through 24 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 7, 21 PD 037. Item 8, 21 PD 038. Item 9, 21 PD 039. Item 10, 21 PD 040. Item 11, 21 PD 041. Item 12, 21 PD 042. Item 13, 21 PD 043. Item 19, 21 UR 025. Item 20, 21 UR 026. Item 21, 21 UR 027. Item 22, 21 UR 030. Item 23, 21 UR 035. And item 24, 21 UR 036. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. All right, are there any items 1 through 24 that staff would like removed from the consent calendar for separate consideration?
Mr. Chair, just a point of procedure. Staff would like items 9 and 12 removed, but if you've received speaker request cards on any of the other items on consent, we'd ask that you remove those as well so that the audience ensures that they have that opportunity to speak. So 9 and 12 from staff, please.
Okay. I've received speaker request forms for item number 7 as well. And item number 20 and item number 22. 22.
Eric.
I would also make a comment at this point. We received a couple speaker request forms for general public comment referencing essentially a laundry list of items. We don't take general public comment during the meeting. We take comments on specific items. We take general public comment at the end of the meeting. And if you want to speak to a specific item, when we're reviewing those items, if I'm not calling your speaker request, just make a motion to me, wave your hands, walk over to this side of the room, stand up. We'll make sure that we hear you. Vicki?
So we've got items 7, 21, and 22 removed?
As well as 9 and 12 that
Yes,
you
and 9
asked
and
for.
12.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, are there any other items that the Planning Commission would like removed for separate consideration? 8? $20? Okay, 20 was called for as well, Vicky? All right, and then Haven, I believe you need to abstain from several items.
Yes.
So that would be adding 11, 19, 21, and 23, and 24. All right, so far, we are going to pull items 7, 8, 9, 12, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And 11. Thank you. It's a team effort today. 19 as well. Good grief. That leaves us with the audience. Are there other items that the audience wants to pull from items 1 through 24, less the 12 or so we've already pulled? Don't usually do this, but I'll make one check back over to staff. All right. The chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar, less items 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24.
So moved.
All right, I'm giving that to Vince. Made the motion to approve the consent calendar less though, with the exception of those items, and Rachel seconded that motion. Are there any comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Test, there we go. Good morning. Item number 7 is a final plan development overlay to allow an apartment complex at the property located at 4815 5th Street. You can see an aerial view of the property shown on the screen in front of you. This property is about 6.7 acres in size, and it's located between Enchanted Pines Drive and 5th Street. This map is showing the zoning of this property and the surrounding properties around it. The subject property is zoned office commercial district, as well as a slight portion zoned medium density residential district. And properties to the west of this are zoned medium density residential district, low density residential district, and we have some general commercial development located to the east of this property. The future land use of this property is employment within an area that contains both urban neighborhood and mixed-use commercial. This is the major street plan. You can see Enchanted Pines Drive is a collector street on the major street plan, and 5th Street is a principal arterial. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application. You can get a sense for what the proposed development would look like. There are a total of 165 units proposed, and they are to be contained within these 11 structures, each containing 15 units. So that would be these structures that you see here. You'll also notice on the site plan there are 4 proposed garage structures. Those are located right here, and those will each have 18 stalls each. The applicant is providing an excess of the parking that is required, and they've also shown that they're meeting the minimum requirements for landscaping, open space, landscaping and open space. Here you can see the open space areas are identified between the areas in red. They've got grassy areas with landscaping where tenants can walk outside their door and throw a Frisbee around, have a picnic, or other activities outside. They are showing there's a approximately 30-foot setback located from the property to the west, so we want to point that out. I understand that there are folks in the audience today from that neighborhood. As we look at this development and that the proposed development is going to be providing housing, which is much needed in our community, we are recommending that the final plan development overlay be approved. There was one other thing I forgot to mention, please excuse me, was related to the traffic impact study. Sometimes apartment developments trigger the requirement for a traffic impact study, and in this instance, the applicant has received an exception from the Public Works Department for that requirement. As the traffic engineer reviewed this proposed development, they noted that one would not be required. Thank you. These are some elevations showing what the proposed structures will look like. They're 3 stories in height. These are some site photos. So this is looking into the property from Enchanted Pines Drive. You can see Fifth Street headed to the south there. Another view along Fifth Street and the commercial development to the south. This is looking north on Fifth Street. And here I want to point out the adjacent properties that are zoned medium density residential. These are generally single family homes. And this is looking west towards that residential development. With that, we are recommending approval of the final plan development overlay with the stipulations in the staff report. But of course, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Sarah. We have 2 speaker requests on this. Any questions for the staff at this point? Rachel?
I'm just wondering if we know why the Public Works Director waives the requirement for a traffic impact study.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
It's not that he waived it, it's that the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual has criteria as to when it's required. This development did not require. How many units are on the property?
There are 165 units.
My apologies. I will defer to Todd.
Todd?
Yeah, actually, when we looked at it, it was determined that we didn't need one because all of the improvements are there, the turn lanes are there, and so what we'd be looking for, it wouldn't really trigger any additional requirements than what we already have at the intersection of Enchanted Pines and the access on 5th.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the speaker requests. Duke Doring, if you could come up to the microphone. Once you're up at the microphone, please identify yourself with your name and address so we have it for our records.
My name is Duke Doring. I live at 125 Savoy Circle, Rapid City 57701. I'm just west of where this new development is proposed. And I must say you've caught me by surprise when I received this letter about a week ago. I bought that, excuse me. I bought my place on the 2nd of June, 2006, which was 15 years ago. And I can remember distinctly talking to the attorney for the builder, and we talked about the lot in question now. And he assured me that it was going to be commercial district and there wouldn't be any housing behind it. So for 15 years, I forgot all about that until I saw the letter the other day. I see it says it's medium density residential district, and I just wonder when that changed and how it changed without me knowing it. Because usually you send me one of these letters if there's anything happening. So my question for you is, when did it happen? Are you sure it happened? And I'll leave it at that, but I'm not very pleased with the development going in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki?
Mr. Chair, if I could have Sarah put up the zoning map. The bulk of the property is zoned office commercial district, which office commercial district has always allowed for residential uses. It wasn't until probably a year and a half ago that we came before you and had single-family homes removed, trying to gear up more for higher density, because some of our office commercial zoning is along arterial streets, and we were having single-family homes that were backing out onto arterial streets, and you supported that, as did council. But apartments have been allowed in office commercial since 1968 at a minimum. The sliver of medium-density residential, that was there probably rezoned at the same time that residential development that this gentleman lives in was rezoned. But they rezone first, and then they plat, and sometimes those lot lines don't match up with the zoning. And so in this case, we have a parcel that's partially zoned medium-density residential, primarily zoned office commercial. Fortunately, the land use is the same, the parking is the same, they're exceeding the setbacks. It is a 12-foot setback required to that west lot line. They're providing 30. So it becomes moot, and you can have more than one zoning designation on a property. So it hasn't been rezoned since probably before the time that the lots along Savoy Circle were created.
Thank you, Vicki. We'll go to the other speaker request. Scott Peterson, if you'd like to come up.
Yes, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Duke's my neighbor, and so I live at, Scott Peterson, I live at 121 Savoy Circle, right next to him. I moved in about a week before Duke did. I was told similarly that it was office commercial and it would not be apartment buildings. And so I'm concerned about 29 feet right outside my property is going to be a 3-story apartment building right off my property line in the backyard. It says that it's going to be 28 feet high. I don't know how a 3-story building can be 28 feet high. It seems kind of tight, so that's a question that I have. One of my big concerns is on the traffic study piece. And so you can see on that strip that where the lines are like this in the orange, just up to the top, that's where the outlet will be to go to 5th Street. And already many times during the day, there's a line of cars there and to turn left and turn right. And so I have no idea how another 165 units with maybe 350, 400 times more a day where people are going to be in and out of this one area, that's not going to cause major problems right there. When people turn left off there, there's been accidents at that corner. We had an accident a few years ago where somebody was coming down 5th Street from the north. They jumped the curb and maybe went 50 yards, 75 yards into the area where these apartments are now going to be. So I think that traffic impact is going to be massive in my area. I'm going to pull out of Savoy Circle and I'm not going to be able to turn right because there's going to be cars stacked up trying to turn left and right onto 5th Street. It's become extraordinarily busy, that road. And a lot of times I'm the front car and I'm waiting a few minutes just to turn on there. So I think it's a really poor decision not to do a traffic study on this. You're adding 165 units, a parking lot that holds 265 cars. I think that's going to be a major problem for everybody that lives in this area. Everybody that lives up the street is going to come down this hill and there's going to be a long line of cars. I think people are going to be, as they pull out of this apartment complex, they're going to be struggling to even pull out of that apartment complex to get onto Enchanted Pines. And I understand how that's zoned as a road, as an arterial road, but it's so close to the main thoroughfare, and it's going to line up, and it's going to cause some problems. So, just wondering if there's anything else here I wanted to say. No, that's my biggest concern, as well as the height of that building. And I wanted to ask, is that height of the building, that 28 feet, is that the top of the building, the very, very top of it, or the peak of it, or is that just the top of the sides of the building too? I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the height of a building is measured the median of the roof, and they've even got a line, maybe Sarah can draw it in, where it shows that 28 feet. So if you look at where the roof begins to slope, it's the median is where their height is measured. And that's true for whether it's a residential, commercial, or industrial building. That's how we measure height in Rapid City.
Thank you, Vicki. Are there other comments or questions from the commission on this item? Karen?
My question probably is to Todd, I suppose, I'm not sure. But when the traffic comes out of the new development, it goes on to Enchanted Pines Street. Is that the right street? And yeah, would it be better to go right straight off to Fifth Street? And is that going to be a conflict?
Todd?
Yeah, when Fifth Street was constructed, there was an approach already put in for that property, so there is a full access onto Fifth Street. So yeah, if Enchanted Pines is backed up, I would anticipate a lot of the people coming out of the apartment complex would access directly onto Fifth Street, whether they go north or south.
Okay.
And that, there's no median in front there, so that's allowed right now.
Okay, I guess it would be too close to have the Enchanted Pines Drive and an access from this new development straight onto Fifth Street. That'd be too close of an the intersections would be too close.
I guess I'm not sure if I'm tracking you. There is an existing approach on Fifth Street for the apartments on the south end of the property line, which is far enough from Enchanted Pines.
Okay.
They're not proposing, and we wouldn't approve another approach onto Fifth Street for the apartments.
That was my question.
Right.
Thanks, Todd.
Yep.
So I'm just going to jump onto this to make sure that I'm catching this. What was just circled down at that point, that even though it appears to go parallel to Fifth Street, that goes to an approach onto Fifth Street there?
Correct. It was already built. It's already in place right now, intended to be a shared access for both lots, north and south of there.
Gotcha. Mike Klosny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe this is for Todd again. Do we know about how many houses or how many people come off of Enchanted from the existing housing? And at what point does it require a traffic study? I know that you're saying that the intersection is designed to accommodate a lot of traffic, but maybe it's a light, maybe it's something to control this a little bit. I don't know what it is that we need.
I couldn't tell you how many houses access at Enchanted Pines. It goes out onto Catron as well, and then up to Mount Rushmore Road. So there's multiple accesses in and out of that whole area. The traffic study, what we would look at is turn lanes, how the intersection functions, and potentially a traffic signal. That intersection is not really close to the warrants for a signal. So any improvements would be traffic or turn lanes, like Enchanted Pines left turn lane, which is there today. If it needs to be lengthened, it would be a pavement marking, because the road is wide enough to extend that turn lane if we had to further to the west with our next pavement marking project if it's needed. So there really isn't any structural changes that we would anticipate to get from that traffic study. And if residents from this apartment complex have to get out on Enchanted Pines, I mean, that's really a private issue. If traffic is backed up on Enchanted Pines, the Enchanted Pines traffic takes priority.
Okay, with that said, though, isn't there a point there where we need to control the traffic? Because I have been on Fifth Street, and sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's not. And especially, I would assume, certain times of day, there's a bottleneck that causes problems there. If the public is having problems, is there a point there? How do they turn around and say, we need a light or we need something done to fix the problem?
If the warrants were met for a traffic signal, then the city would install a traffic signal, when our traffic engineer looked at it, where we're not close to needing a traffic signal there. And 167 dwellings in that whole neighborhood would not push it over the threshold at this point. So
Okay.
that's why we determined that we didn't need one, because the lanes are there and the traffic signal is not going to be warranted.
I guess I would just maybe suggest if there's a possibility that we revisit it and see what 165 units would do to that, and if that's possible.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
if it would help, Mr. Crosney, so the city does do traffic counts on a routine basis throughout our community, and we do monitor traffic if we know that there's an issue at an intersection. We look at those counts, and we're reviewing whether or not warrants are being met. It doesn't necessarily take a complaint from a neighborhood. And we do have Steve Roman, our city's traffic engineer, in the audience right now. And if you have any questions to him, but it's something that Public Works puts a lot of energy into, and they need to be given credit for that. They do look at busy roads and review whether warrants are met throughout our community on a routine basis.
And I do appreciate what they do, because I know they have their hands full, especially with the way the community is growing. So in no way am I saying they're not doing their job. So I just want to make sure we take care of our public, so, okay.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me try to understand that what you were circling a second ago, that south corner there, that's not an access onto Fifth then, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So folks in in this development can actually access Fifth Street from what you just circled there in yellow?
Yes, that's correct.
So there's two accesses now, the one to Savoy and then the one directly onto Fifth?
Close. It's Enchanted Pines Drive, but.
Or
that is
Enchanted,
to the
I'm sorry. So is there any plans, that the speed limit on that from Minnesota all the way out to Catron is 45 miles per hour. Is there any plans to reduce that speed limit?
Todd, probably.
I don't believe so, no. Not for Fifth Street.
Well, yeah, I understand why the traffic impact study, there is a concern for it from the citizens, and if we don't know, based on the increase in the people that will be using Fifth Street from that complex. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee on this one, or commission? Anybody with a motion on this one then? Okay, Rachel made the motion to approve item number 7 in accordance with staff stipulation. Is there a second?
Second.
Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 8. Mike, I think this is the one you pulled. Okay. Mike Kwasny is going to abstain from voting on item number 8. Normally on a consent item, we don't receive a full presentation. Is there anybody on the commission that wants to receive the presentation on this initial plan development? Okay. Karen made the motion to approve item number 8 with the stipulations as listed, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries with Mike Kwasny abstaining. Item number 9.
Chair, staff pulled this item from consent. We're asking that you continue this to your January 6th 2022 Planning Commission meeting. The applicant's looking at potentially submitting some exception requests to some of the design standards for mini warehousing and general commercial, and they're getting those to us now, but we need time to review them and bring a recommendation forward to you. So our recommendation, continue please to January 6th, 22.
All right, Vince made the motion to continue, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10? We didn't pull 10. Item number 11. Item number 11 was pulled in part to allow Haven to abstain from this item, and we also have a speaker request on it.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would say on this is that this is a permitted site. If the planned development isn't there, they've asked that the medical cannabis be approved at this location. We have stipulations in there that address state regulations, city regulations, odor control, waste management control, security control. And so our recommendation is to approve. If after you hear from the audience member, you'd like to see a brief presentation, but because of the length of the agenda, we'll just step aside and take those comments.
All right. Roger Tellinghusen?
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Roger Tellinghusen on behalf of Moyle Petroleum, the applicant, and in light of the fact that I'm the only speaker, I'll waive my rights.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, item number 11, major amendment to a planned development to allow medical cannabis dispensary. Any questions, comments? All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 11 with stipulations, and Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries with Haven abstaining. Item number 12. This is another one that we pulled in part to allow Haven to abstain, so he will do so on this.
I believe that you also received a letter on this one from an attorney. So this is a final plan development overlay in the Orchard Meadows development to allow a medical cannabis dispensary. The property is zone general commercial. It is located within a planned development. Future land use plan shows this as mixed use. You can see that the properties all around it are also mixed use. The only reason this wasn't a permitted location is because across South Dakota Highway 44 in the county, they have suburban residential zoning. Otherwise, this would not have potentially triggered the review you have today. It's adjacent to two arterial streets, Outville Road and South Dakota Highway 44. It will be accessed by Lytle Lane. They are proposing to construct a 2,516 square foot dispensary. They do provide sufficient parking. They will be providing the landscaping. Their signage is limited. And one thing that we looked at very closely in all these medical cannabis dispensaries is that we didn't bring anything forward with LED lighting. We want these all to be stagnant signs to minimize the impact even in a commercial area. As we looked at the site itself, you can see some of the development in the area. This is looking back towards Outville Road. You can see the car wash. There's a convenience store that's currently to the east of the site. Looking back along 44 to the west. Looking into Orchard Meadows. Looking east on 44, and there you see the full scope of the Common Sense store. And then across the 44 is the residential development. So it's this area right in here that caused the conflict of separation of 500 feet to a residential district. When we were looking at this, one of the things that we tried to do, to be fair to everyone that's trying to secure a VI in the dispensary licensing, especially since Rapid City is limited to just 15, is to ensure that if there is adequate separation and there isn't a saturation of use, we were bringing forward a recommendation to approve. In this case, Highway 44 is a separation between these uses. This has got 180 foot of right-of-way, 5 lanes of traffic. There's also 100 foot of railroad right-of-way that further separates this property from the residential across the street. Just the very design of 44, the volume of traffic that it accommodates, it really separates those neighborhoods. If we would have seen residential on the south side of Lytle Lane, where they're interfacing with each other, people are backing out of their residential lot and they're looking into the dispensary parking lot, those are issues that do cause direct conflict. And remember, these are for medical cannabis dispensaries only. So with that, we are recommending that this item be approved with the stipulations as noted in the staff report. And a part of what we tried to do in our standard stipulations is to ensure that all state and city regulations are met each time. I'm here for questions, and please take public comment.
I'm going to jump in with a question before calling the public comment. Just to maybe, I would like if Vicki, you could explain the chapter and verse on the separation from residential, because that's a common theme in a lot of these applications, if you could.
When we brought the zoning ordinance forward to you and ultimately council, where we landed is that if a property was within 500 feet of a church, a public park, a residential zoning district, or a child care center, that it would be a conditional use. And we had to review whether or not there was separation sufficient to minimize the impact between those uses. At all times, these uses have to be 1,000 feet from a school. That's required by the state. The city does not have the authority to waive that or to reduce it.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. Roger Tellinghusen on this one, item number 12.
Good morning again. Roger Tellinghusen on behalf of the applicant, Moyle Petroleum. The only reason that I've put in a speaker request was to respond to the letter that the commission has received opposing this location. But I would like to endorse the comments by Ms. Fisher. We sincerely believe that the separation that the highway offers to this property, the fact that it's zoned properly for this particular type of a use, we think it's an appropriate location for a medical cannabis dispensary, which frankly, let's be honest, medical cannabis dispensary is really just a specialized pharmacy. That's all it is. And we believe that that's an appropriate use for this property, and we would encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Kwasny.
Vicki, I have a question for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, when you said the school, they can be so far from a school, that's also school land? If they have land purchased for future school, does that also include that, or?
I'm going to defer to Kelly Brennan.
Kelly?
So when we were doing the determinations on how we judged whether a use was an actual use or not, the attorney's office and I worked together, and what we did was we used the tax code. So if the school is coded as a school, then we counted it as a school. That also includes any uses. So if you look at like Stevens, how they have some kind of sports stuff outside of kind of their main campus area, we also counted that as a school. So anywhere that students will congregate for education purposes, and the tax code aligns.
Okay, I guess the question I have though, as we go forward, we could cause potential problems with school. They have the idea of putting a school in the future in an area, and we allow the cannabis, then we restrict the school property from being able to do the,
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
It doesn't quite work that way. So, and this is true for like on-sale, adult business stores. If they're there and there is no conflict of separation, and someone chooses to come in, whether it's a child care center or a school, and they choose to come within that boundary, we don't limit them. They know going into it what's there, and the dispensary would be allowed to continue. So we don't limit them in making the decision to step inside that boundary.
okay. Little confusing. It seems like we're crossing a border there that we have kids in a position where they're close to something we don't want them close to, but, okay, thanks.
All right, other comments or questions on item number 12? The commission? Vince? All right, Vince made the motion to approve item number 12 with the stipulations as listed. And Karen seconded that motion. All those, well, comments on the motion? All those in favor of approving item number 12, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, that takes us to 19. Item 19. One of the reasons we pulled item 19 again is so Haven can abstain from this. And don't believe we have public, I'm sorry, got to talk into the microphone. I don't believe we have public comment requested on this item. Did anyone want to speak on item 19? All right. Karen made the motion to approve item 19, and Mike Quasney seconded that motion. That was per staff stipulations. Any discussion on the motion? Vince?
Mr. Chair. Locate.
Maybe we can pull that up. Kelly?
So this map shows all the conditional use permit applications for a medical cannabis dispensary for this planning commission and also the next one. Just to give you an idea, there are some numbers in some of the circles. All of those locations were pulled off consent due to that saturation, but that's what those numbers indicate, is that there was 4 applications or 2 applications at those proposed locations.
Can you circle item 19 in particular?
Maybe.
I see it, but I don't have a pen.
Let's see here. We're going to be right.
No.
Can you see me?
Up. Closer to the center of city from Jackson.
Oh, this one right here. I apologize. I can pull up an actual map of that one if you give me just a second. Which number is this, please?
19.
Thank you. Nope. See, I haven't been here in a long time, guys. How did I get out of here? Here, fix me.
You're good, you're good. From the agenda, they're all listed and directly linked, so it's number
How did I escape?
19.
Yep. And this location is currently, I believe, an essential oil shop. It's a retail location, so it'd just be a switch. But we can go through it all if you'd like. It is general commercial. The reason this one was a conditional use permit needed was due to the residential to the rear. So this is looking at the actual building west and east. And then this picture shows where that residential use is to the rear of the building. We noted the elevation change as well as the separation with the storage garages there.
All right, there is a motion on the floor to approve item 19. Are there any other Questions, comments on this item? All those in favor of approval of item 19 per staff stipulations, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and as I noted, Haven abstained from this item. Item number 20.
Item number 20 is also for a medical cannabis dispensary. We had this item listed on the consent calendar. However, we did receive some correspondence from a neighboring property in opposition, so I do have a brief presentation available if you'd like more information about this project.
Yeah, please, we have 2 speaker requests as well.
The proposed dispensary is located at 2706 East South Dakota Highway 44. You can see the boundaries of the parcel in front of you. This particular project was a conditional use permit because of its adjacency to residential zoning. You can see that here to the northwest. There's residential structures located north, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The other surrounding development includes general commercial and light industrial. The future land use plan for this area is showing a mixture of mixed-use commercial and light industrial, as well as the urban neighborhood to the north. This is the major street plan. You can see South Valley Drive is a collector, and Highway 44 is a principal arterial roadway. This is showing the proposed signage. As Ms. Fisher noted earlier, it's going to be static signage. You can see the location of where it's proposed. This is an existing building that's there today. It's got about 12,600 square feet of industrial use. They are proposing to put the medical dispensary in the front part of the building, which will include only about 1,000 square feet. And so you can see where the signage is. We'll notate where that part of the building is versus the existing use. Go back one. There's another view of the property as you're looking at it from Highway 44. Oh, yes, thank you. That was bound to happen at least once today. So in this view, this photograph, you can see the adjacent residential, and I want to point out that there's some landscaping here, as well as a change in elevation that buffers the use from the residential use located back here. This is looking across Highway 44 at the property on the other side of the road. Here we're looking to the adjacent convenience store. There again, you see the convenience store and Highway 44 looking to the west. This is looking to the east at the existing industrial development. It's a U-Haul center. This is another elevation of the buildings showing the side. And then again, the view of the building looking towards Highway 44. So with this application, we were really looking at how is the use separated from that residential district to the north. Given the distance, it's about 400 feet away. There's a change in elevation. We noted the existence of chain link fence with slats, as well as the change in elevation. And for those reasons, we found that this use would be sufficiently buffered from that residential area.
Thanks, Sarah. Ron Jeffries, if you'd like to address this item.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you for the time. My name is Ron Jeffries, and I am a minority owner in Puffy's LLC. I want to first thank the staff for all their efforts that they've gone into to review all these applications. It's been a tremendous amount of work. I wanted to just address 2 items. First off, to let you know that that particular location was previously a casino. It was a casino up until 2014. So there has been similar adult-type businesses located at that location. Secondly, I think you received a letter from Mr. Shaffey, and I think he's got a representative here today to speak, to address certain issues. And I wanted to just address the issues in that letter, if I may. First off, they identified that there is a zoning barrier for residential. That is true about most all the applications, as Mr. Braun previously pointed out. We do think that there are significant barriers between this location and the residences, as Sarah just pointed out. Two of the other items that he addressed, though, one was that there is a Rural American Initiatives and the Abbott House located across Highway 44. First, neither the Abbott House nor Rural American Initiatives are covered by South Dakota statute or city ordinance for this matter. However, this location is still 1,500 feet away from those residents, separated by Highway 44. That 1,500 feet is beyond any distance requirement for any schools or any other type of setback. The third item that was brought up is that there was a question about whether or not Western Dakota Tech would have housing development built right north of this property. I met with President Ann Bowman yesterday, and Western Dakota Tech has neither a position for nor against medical cannabis at this location. Further, the only discussions that they've had about potential housing, student housing for Western Dakota Tech, concerned 3 parcels that Mr. Shaffey owned directly north of Western Dakota Tech. They have not had conversations about any student housing located north of this property. So, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle Trelaw.
Kyle Trelaw, representing the property owner in this particular application. Once again, thank you for taking time right before a holiday, and we've got quite a list here, so I'll try to keep comments as brief as possible. Yes, we do have opposition to this particular use for basically the same reasons that were just mentioned there. We are directly adjacent to residential properties that we own and manage as rentals right now. This is part of a larger master plan for residential development that will come and abut directly to this property line. So as we look at this use now, we have residents with people living, and you could see the pictures of where the home was right above the proposed facility. We also have plans to do additional development in this area that would include more residential units. So just looking at this particular facility and that long-term consequence of how that might affect the development, we would request that this application be denied on those grounds. We also, the 2 schools that were mentioned here, we have the RAI, which we just built here a few years ago, that's just being down the street on Valley Drive, basically 2 blocks away. And we do have Western Dakota Tech that is, down the street just to the east. So even though no official opposition from the schools, we do have those adjacencies in both of those with the residential uses directly behind this facility. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. From the commission, comments or questions on item number 20? Motion from the commission? All right. Karen made the motion to approve item number 20 with stipulations, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 21. And again, this is another item that Commissioner Stuck will be abstaining from. We have a speaker request on item 21 from Wade Huntington, and we could also see a short presentation if the commission would like.
Wade Huntington is the applicant, so he would just be here if you have any questions, I assume.
Okay.
We recommend approval of steps. We can go through the presentation if you would like, or if anyone has any questions.
Any questions from the commission on item number 21? The location's up on the screen.
This used to be the old Pizza Hut. When we went and did site photos, actually I do want to show you these because they're really improving the property. So this is currently what it looks like just a few days ago. So.
Any concerns from the commission on this one? All right, Rachel made the motion to approve item number 21 per the staff stipulations. And Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And carries with Commissioner Stuck abstaining. Item number 22.
Mr. Chair, did you have a speaker request on that one?
I do, but I believe it's from the applicant as well. It's from Dolan Holdings, Hive Collective.
That is also the applicant for that property. So
Okay.
again, we would recommend approval with stipulations. If there's any questions, we can be available for that.
Okay, and Commissioner Stuck's abstaining from item number 22. Any questions for staff? This one's located at 918 East North Street.
So this is the old Subway location, if that kind of gets you in the right framework of where that's at.
Okay. All right. John Herr made the motion to approve item number 22 per the stipulations as noted, and Mike Quasney seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 23. Another one that we pulled to allow Commissioner Stuck to abstain from.
Right. No visitor speaker requests on that one.
Yep, don't have any public comment noted. All right, Rachel made the motion to approve item number 23 per the stipulations. Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 24.
Same situation.
I do have a question on this, though. So Commissioner Stuck is abstaining from item number 24. This one, since it is pulled, this one's in a heavy industrial district, which is, if I read correctly, per our regulations, a permitted use in heavy industrial. I was trying to look at these as pharmacies, and we would put a pharmacy in heavy industrial, and I
Retail
didn't have
is-
the chance to really think this through on the regulation end of it. But if you
Retail is allowed in heavy industrial and light industrial.
Okay.
And so if someone wanted today to put a pharmacy in one of those zoning districts, they could. Obviously, they seek to locate in a marketable area. Heavy industrial typically doesn't lend itself to marketability for that type of use, but it would be permitted today if someone wanted to come in and get a permit for one.
Okay. All right.
Move approval.
Okay, Karen made the motion to approve item number 24 with the stipulations, and Rachel seconded that motion. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could take items 25 and 26 together.
Please do.
They are a rezone application to rezone from no-use district to low-density residential 2 district, and a preliminary subdivision plan to create 169 single-family residential lots, 10 townhome lots, and a common lot. And with that, I'll show you some slides. Do you notice I still say slides from all those years ago when we used to have a slide projector in the room? Oh, you guys laugh. It was no fun when the carousel would pop and spew them on the floor. Of course, it's no fun right now that this won't open up this agenda either. Oh, rebel.
Vicki, just pretend it's PowerPoint, and there's still slides.
I'm going to bang a little harder. I'm sure that'll work. It's just not letting me in. Which one? 26, right there. Don't you hate it when that happens? So the property is located north of the area that we know as Red Rocks. And currently, Cloud Peak Drive provides access into the site. The rezone itself is for 140.9 acres. The property is currently zoned general ag, or excuse me, this property is annexed into the city limits. And so it's got a no-use zoning designation. That serves as a holding zone until we see development come forward. They have, I believe, 120 days in order to get the property zoned to a zoning designation. We do see this appropriate as low-density neighborhood based on the city's future land use plan. Low-density residential District 2 is an appropriate zoning designation. And as you can see, there is so much property in the area that is identified as low-density neighborhood. And what that means is when a developer comes forward and they're showing that they're providing streets, water, sewer, and drainage elements to support development, then it's appropriate to rezone. So part of the criteria that we have to look at in order to bring you a recommendation as a part of that rezone is, have they done that? Have they met that? And that is why this is coupled with the preliminary subdivision plan, because they have been working with staff to bring forward that street networking, sewer, water, and drainage components. This shows that Wind Cave Peak is a collector street and will extend into the property. The balance of the roads within the development are local streets or residential streets. This shows the development, and the circle in blue at the very northern part is a drainage pond. This is a master plan of the property. They do have a common lot where they are providing walking paths for the residents of this development and the previous phase of development that they brought forward, known as High Point Ranch. This one is High Point Ranch North. One of the questions that we had when we had some preliminary discussion with the Planning Commission was in regards to Sheridan Lake Road and whether or not it could accommodate this additional traffic. What you see highlighted is a city project, and this is from slightly south of Catron Boulevard to Corral Drive, and it's projected for as a 2024, and it's to widen this to a 5-lane. One of the other comments that some planning commissioners had identified is that there was concern that there was only one way in and one way out, and I wanted to demonstrate that there are 2 points of access, so that if you are traveling up from Sheridan Lake Road down Dunsmore and you're following Cog Hill in, if for any reason one of these intersections would go down, you can still come out through this area, hit Port Rush, go over and come out Muirfield. So there are more than one way in and one way out. This is looking into the site. Again, some area photos showing the terrain of what it is that they are developing. It is a beautiful area. Some of the existing development just south of this. Again, some of the existing development that will abut this development. So let's go back up to the layout of the project. There we go. Where did my color go? This is a phased project, and it's for 5 phases. So as we looked at this, we wanted to ensure that traffic was being addressed, noting that the applicant will continue to work with the city engineering division, water will be provided, sewer will be provided, drainage will be detained, but certainly traffic is an issue. And this did trigger a traffic impact study. They submitted this. Our city has looked, traffic engineer has looked at it, as has the county, highway department, and the state's engineers as well. And as a part of the recommendation that we have before you today, Per the recommendation of the traffic impact study, if you note stipulation number 4 on the staff report, it identifies that this applicant will be responsible for submitting construction plans for the widening and restriping the eastbound approach on Sheridan Lake Road to include a dedicated 12-foot left turn lane within the existing center striped area. In addition, a minimum 100 feet of storage, 100 feet of deceleration, and 120-foot taper length for the eastbound left turn lane must be provided. The second element of the traffic impact study identified that in time, Dunsmore Road, north of Port Rush, as we get to the final phases of this development, may have congestion issues. The way that's addressed is to remove parking on one side of Dunsmore Road. The city engineer, traffic engineer, will, as they're established by ordinance, they have the authority to do, they will monitor and continue to monitor the traffic on that strip of road, and if it is warranted, we will remove parking from one side of the street. I think that one of the main issues that we've had to overcome in looking at this is years ago, Dunsmore Road was an arterial up to Port Rush, and then it was a collector up to future development to the north. Somewhere down the line, there was an adjacent property owner that did not want Dunsmore to be the collector, concerned that it would dead end into his property and what that would mean for him. So they brought forward a proposal to make Cog Hill the collector, and it is designed as one, and it will better accommodate that traffic. But we're all creatures of habit. We take the shortest route out. And so that is why we've got this situation on Dunsmore, where it's built as a local road, it's going to function as a collector. And so removing that parking then does provide that pavement width, where it will, if needed, function as a collector. It's not determined that it's needed today, but potentially by the time we hit that 5th phase, we will be looking at removing parking on one side of the street. So with the improvements on Sheridan Lake Road, with the provision that we could remove that parking on one side, noting that utilities and drainage are being addressed, we are in support of this development because that infrastructure element has been provided. I am here if you have any questions, but I would also like to note that the applicant is in the audience and has a very brief presentation that he would like to make. It might be beneficial to hear from him too, and then you can pose questions to either of us, and then if there's any comment from the audience as well.
So far, I just have a request from Mike. Do you want to allow the public comment from the applicant prior to your comment, or do you want to? Yeah, we can. Okay. Andrew Scull.
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Andrew Scull, 2665 Cavern Road. I represent and am managing member of Watershed Development. Thank you, Vicki, for your presentation. A few more things that I wanted to note, just to create some clarity, specific to the traffic engineering requirements, and we do have the traffic engineer available by phone if we have more detailed questions. But in terms of Dunsmore, currently Dunsmore's a design capacity of 10,000 cars. Currently it sits at about 3,000 trips per day. The 4,300 trips is, if this is not developed, that is the anticipated traffic in 2027. This includes a 2% growth rate per year, as well as including the 142 unit apartment complex and about 30 other dwelling units. When built out, per the traffic report, which they use 2027 as the build-out day, we would still be way underneath street design capacity of 6,000 vehicle trips per day. So there's still ample capacity is what is highlighted in the traffic engineering report. Sheridan Lake Road is designed for capacity of 10 to 15,000 trips per day. Currently they're seeing 8,300. At build-out we would see 10,600, still well underneath capacity. I think something that needs to be understood is this is not a project like an apartment complex where you're going to see 170 units hit the market on day one. This is a phased development. The traffic report states an anticipated build-out of 2027. Our projections in terms of market conditions and our experience in the market is theoretically we'll probably see about an average of 25 homes a year actually hit the market. Now, With current conditions, maybe it'd be a little bit faster today, but we also know over 10 years there's highs and lows in development, right? So what we're providing to you here in this chart is the various different phases, the number of lots, and the anticipated year to which those homes would be built out. We're adding about just under 1,800 vehicle trips per day. As you can see here, that would be staggered over 10 years between 2021 and 2031. So if you look, about every 2 years, you know, there's another 30 to 40 lots that would actually be sold, built, and brought to the market. So we're not looking at an instantaneous piece there. The school, there is a projected school. They have bought land on the corner of Dunsmore and Sheridan Lake Road, 40 acres. We think that'll be built in 5 to 10 years and will include a future third connector. We've worked collectively with the fire department in terms of mitigation and sprinklers for all homes. Density, we have an average lot size of 0.64 acres. With our green and community space, we're just over an acre. In comparison to Carriage Hills is about 1.5 acres per lot. Carriage Hills will never be built again. South Canyon Country Estates will never be built again. These infrastructure demands today require much more. There's no sewer, there's no sidewalk, there's no curb and gutter, storm sewer, streetlights, or shoulders. Today's infrastructure requires more.
All right,
and about
Mr.
10
Stahl,
years ago, this
have-
commission had a discussion about septic tanks. And we can talk about that after you ask
You
questions.
might have some questions, but for now. All right, Mike, you're first up on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would go back to the traffic study, and I guess, Vicki, if we could show those 2 exits out of the developments that we're talking.
Could you prompt me? Could you tell those guys to get me going again?
While they're getting those up, I struggle because all that traffic is coming onto Sheridan Lake Road. I will forever struggle because I've driven Sheridan Lake Road during certain times, and it's very congested.
Put back up here.
I still believe that there's an option to go off the backside of these developments to figure out how to not have it where everything has to go onto Sheridan Lake Road. I was one of the ones that brought it up before, and I'll continue to bring it up. I think we need to have better access to this area. I think this is a great development. I think it's got a lot of pluses. As far as the school, I think they're a little behind the 8 ball because I know that Coral Drive, all those schools are bursting at the seams right now, and they are actually struggling to get kids. They bus kids away from this area to get them to other schools. So there's some things going on here that I think that we need to really look at and see what we're doing with our traffic, with the schooling. There are some problems that occur with this. Yes, we're a little at a time, but at the same time, are we ahead of the ball game, or are we reacting to problems when they show up? And I challenge that we need to react to the problems that we're developing a little sooner.
Thanks, Mike. Other questions or comments on item 25 and 6? Karen?
Chair?
Oh, sorry, Vicki.
We do have the city's traffic engineer in the audience, if anyone has questions for him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I sort of echo the same things that Mike was just saying. I think the issue for most of us is, since we don't live out in that area, I know you get a lot of traffic within a development, and that's just natural how that works. But when you look at Sheridan Lake Road, as it goes into Corral Drive and all that school traffic, you have the school traffic that goes that way, and then you also have the people that are coming to town from that area. And it is, at certain times of the day, it is really amazing to see thousands, it looks like thousands of cars. I mean, it's not that many, but there's so many cars backed up. It just is amazing. I know that Sheridan Lake Road is potentially to be widened, as you mentioned in your report, and that'll help a lot, I think, when you have more than just the 2 lanes going back and forth. But the whole area out there, I think there should be another way to get out of there without just going on Sheridan Lake Road, and I think that's the crux of the whole problem. I think for a lot of people. I'm glad that Andy mentioned that it's going to be in phases, because that was my big concern. If it was going to really hit it before we really got Sheridan Lake Road developed in 2024, that makes me feel better that it's going to be phased out like that, and I think that will help ease some of the concerns. There'll be a lot more traffic, but I don't know that you can tell the difference between 10, 20 houses, the traffic for that for the first year as compared to what's there already. It's just more cars. So I don't know how you can solve the issue with Red Rocks and that whole development out there for traffic, and I don't think that's something that we can do up here at this point. So I think the question really comes down to, is this an appropriate zoning for that area, which I believe it is. I mean, you're surrounded by low density. They're not going to put apartments up there. They're going to have single or twin homes up there, and I think that's appropriate for that area. So that's my comments.
Thanks, Karen. I'm just going to chime in here since nobody else has put their light up, but I don't have any problems with this development in particular that I could come up with. I reviewed all the information, and it just looks like a beautiful development, and like Karen said, the land use that they're requesting is appropriate for what that area of our community is. If I do have an issue, it's just looking at the vacant space around this, on our map that we see right here, the land that hasn't been developed yet. And I don't want to belabor this meeting with existential questions, but I would like some feedback from the planning department on how do we approach areas like this, because this isn't the only area in our community where we have thousands of acres yet to be developed, yet major access roads that aren't currently built, and the question is, are they planned to be built to handle those thousands of acres being developed? So I would put that as a general question for future discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I might just very quickly. So as you know, staff has worked diligently in the past to try to coordinate a street construction to the north that would tie in with 44 Jackson Boulevard. There's been opposition from neighborhoods to the north, terrain constraints, the cost of street connections. We continue to look at that. We continue to try to coordinate those efforts so that we do alleviate some of this traffic from Sheridan Lake Road. We anticipate that as development occurs, whether it's the school and they're creating another street connection further east on Dunsmore, or future development of the Celador Ranch property that would provide a street connection close to Clarkson, west of this site, it's still putting all that traffic on Sheridan Lake Road. There is a less Hollers Way that is a street connection on the major street plan that should eventually, as development occurs, alleviate some of that traffic, where it will encourage those coming out of this area to then go east to 16 and then come into the city at the intersection of Catherine and 16. Lots and lots of collaboration between the county, the state, and the city on those efforts. We have quarterly meetings to discuss this topic, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. After I got off topic, anybody with more on topic, on item discussion issues, questions? All right, Vince made the motion to approve items 25 and 26 per the stipulation. Okay. Thank you, Vince. Is there a second to Vince's motion? Haven seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries with Mike Kwasny voting no. That takes us to item number 27.
Item number 27 is an initial plan development overlay to allow a hotel and mixed-use condominium development. This property is located at 6400 Mount Rushmore Road. You can see an aerial view of the property in front of you. This is the 6.8 acre lot that was formerly developed with the recreation destination known as Black Hills Maze, and it has currently been sold and up for redevelopment. You can see the zoning of the property. It's zoned general commercial along the South Highway 16 corridor, which generally consists of all commercial development. Future land use designation for this property in the comprehensive plan is mixed-use commercial. And here you can see the major street plan with Mount Rushmore Road being a principal arterial and Catron Boulevard nearby also a principal arterial. This is a site plan of the proposed development. You can see the different components. Draw your attention to the northern portion of the site. This is the proposed hotel. It's going to have 114 rooms. And then to the south of the site is the mixed-use structure. So it'll have 35,000 square feet of general commercial on the ground floor, as well as 2 residential condominium towers. The towers are located here and here. And in looking at the initial plan development, there are 2 exceptions that the applicant would like to secure. Those 2 exceptions are for height, and the height is related to the condominium towers. As you may be familiar, the general commercial district allows 45 feet or 4 stories generally, and these developments are proposed to be 8 stories and 10 stories here. That's the main item we want to bring to your attention as far as parking, landscaping. Those minimum standards of the code are being shown as being met on this development. Here's another rendering showing kind of how that development would function. You can see an outdoor amenity deck between the 2 condominium towers and sufficient landscaping and parking that's being provided. In addition to surface parking, they're also proposing a parking structure. The applicant provided some photographic renderings to show what the development would look like, especially noting that there may be some concern about the height. This is, as you can see, Highway 16, which I want to point out is an entrance corridor in the city's future land use plan. When we look at entrance corridors, those are really the kind of defining entryways into the community. They create that initial sort of sense of place, convey community identity, and so we want to, be careful about the character of development in these areas. The comprehensive plan does note that within entrance corridors, the focus really should be more on preserving scenic views as opposed to prioritizing intense development. So that's kind of what we're looking at is what is the intensity of this proposed development and what is the impact to the entrance corridor and including the views of the hills. So hopefully these photographic renderings will kind of give a sense of what that would be. This is looking south from the former NAU development. This is the proposed development from Catron Boulevard looking to the north. Here you can see the 2 towers, the 8-story here and 10 stories here. And the applicant also provided renderings that show what some of the other development that's proposed for this area to kind of give that sense of what it might look like when it's fully developed. So as a comparison, this is just the structures themselves. And then here, if development occurs as it could in the future, then that would be more of a depiction. Here's looking south of Catron Boulevard again at the 2 proposed towers. And then here, they're showing some of the other office and commercial development, other 4-story structures and other development that could occur along this corridor. Here are some site photos looking into the property. You can see that the sign was posted. This is looking to the east from Highway 16. Another view into the property. This is looking to the east along Access Road. It was noted in the staff report that the applicant will need to coordinate with the DOT on access into this property since Tucker Road may be eliminated as part of a future DOT project, and the applicant and the DOT are in communications about that. This is looking back towards Rapid City along Highway 16, and then looking to the south towards Catron Boulevard. Looking to the west. And then this is a ways down, closer to looking back at the development further, so you can, see the hills back there in the background. And I should note as well, this is an initial plan development. Due to the nature of this use, a traffic impact study will be required upon submittal of a final plan development overlay. So if there are any road improvements or street improvements that need to be made in order to accommodate the traffic created by this development, that's something that they will need to show with the traffic impact study and the final. So as we're looking at this, we're certainly in support of the mixed-use component, the hotel with the ground floor commercial and the residential above. As far as the height exception is concerned, in reviewing the city's future land use plan, we found that this appears to be in conflict with the goal of protecting scenic views as opposed to intense development along entryway corridors. I believe the applicants are in the audience, and I also will stand for any questions if you have them.
Thank you. I do have a speaker request form from the applicant. Should I go with that? Kyle, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you again. Kyle Chalor, representing Dream Design, 520 Kansas City, Rapid City Street. What we have here is what I would consider another exciting development on the Highway 16 and Catron Boulevard corridor. This is an opportunity for us to incorporate a lot of the concepts found in the comprehensive plan into this one project. So we're taking and we're redeveloping a site. We're able to infill on a property that's already currently being used. You look at the densities that we could be proposing on this, up to 75%. You know, inside the staff report, it notes that this is just a 17% development density. So, you know, we understand that we're asking for height, but that height is integral to the project, the condo towers themselves. You know, to help lessen that impact, we're reducing the overall density of the entire property redevelopment. We do have 2 residential condos, one 8-story and one 10-story. And then just to kind of give a better understanding of the property or the project, we've got a base floor level that's about 35,000 square feet of commercial ground. Underneath that, we have underground covered parking, and then we have the residential condos that would sit on top of that. I think that staff did a great job of presenting exactly what we have here. And one of the items that we really wanted to stress is that, you know, there's development going on right now, and a lot of it we've been a part of. You've got Black Hills Corp, you've got the recent Rapid City orthopedic monument facility that was put in. You've got the VA that's under construction right now. You've got additional infrastructure being built all around this particular site. Not to mention several different apartment complexes of varying heights that, you know, some have been granted height exceptions and to build this up and to quite honestly take advantage of some of the views that we have in this area. So one of the things that we really wanted to present overall was just how that development is going to look from these various angles when you're looking at this particular facility, so that you can see that, you know, there's going to be a lot of development. It is an intense development. It's also identified as a community activity center, which supports that. A few of the other items that, you know, we looked at were, of course, you know, some of the principal goals that you find in the comprehensive plan, which is, you know, specifically set around these community activity centers, but, you know, making that livable community. You know, this hits the goals found in there, you know, providing economic stability. We've got a particular type of housing that we're providing here that isn't found anywhere else. We've got a lot of 4 3-story structure apartments built in this area. This provides another type of housing to support some of these professional level jobs. You've got Black Hills Corp on the corner, the orthopedic center that I talked about, but also, you know, continued expansion of this area. You know, we'll do and build the building with, you know, earth tone colors. We'll have, I'll defer to any more questions because the little red light came on.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks.
I appreciate that. Mike Kwasny.
As usual, Dream Design has come up with a great project, and they've got it's a beautiful building. The only thing we're missing is that the height. We've fought real hard to keep the height so we can keep the hills as a center part of our community. This is the road to Mount Rushmore, a national monument. It is the road into town. I think there's opportunities to put tall buildings like this in other areas. Most of the buildings that are in there have been restricted, and any that are a little above have been hard fought to get there, And I think this creates a problem in the future because now we've blown the height restrictions completely out of the ballpark. And so I would be voting no on this for the simple fact that we are way over the height that we need to go in this area. And I think the view of the hills and Mount Rushmore and all the things that we have going for us needs to be taken care of, needs to be looked at. And as people come in and out of our community, we need to make sure that we're thinking about that as we block the hills in this area. So I will be voting no on this, and I would hope that I have some other people along with that.
Rachel.
It's kind of a weird question, but it's a question for Kyle. I noticed that the orientation of the buildings, like it almost appears to be like reducing the visual impact from the road. You know, the hotel, you're not looking at the long face, you're looking at the short face. And then kind of turning them as a diamond, I mean, you're actually looking at more surface area, but I think it's a softer kind of look. And I'm just wondering, was that intentional?
No, thank you for the question, and yes, it was intentional. We did our best to minimize how this site and the view angles would look and try to create these view sheds that would minimize the overall impact. One other thing that I did want to kind of hit on real quick was, you know, this is an entrance corridor. And one of the items discussed and made a point in entrance corridors is that this is the view. This is how the city is portrayed. And we have all of these great buildings and all of these, you know, high intense office buildings, corporate headquarters going up in this area. This is another extension of that, so that when people are seeing Rapid City and they get that first time view, that they have the ability to see that there are multiple options for housing and good community feel. Thank you.
Thank you for answering my question, Kyle.
Haven?
So there's a height restriction here of 45 feet by or is that right?
Vicki?
48 or what?
In this case, it's 35 feet or
35.
Oh, no, it is 45.
45. So what, I assume there's no other buildings on this stretch, including Black Hills Energy, that exceeds that? Would that be right?
The Black Hills Energy did get an exception to the height based on their ground elevation, and that from a distance it would not perceive to be more than 4 stories. Let me say this, and I think it might answer your question. So currently in Rapid City, outside of the central business district, the height is limited to 45 feet for commercial, 35 feet for residential. Other development that may occur along Mount Rushmore Road will be limited to that 45 feet or 4 stories. Or they'll be coming to you for a variance or presented as a part of a planned development. In the past, you have granted 3 exceptions. 1 you actually denied, but council granted. 2 apartments were allowed to be 45 feet, and then the Black Hills Energy building was allowed at a higher height as well. But that is the limit to the height exceptions that you've had to date, and anything else would have to come back before you.
So the 45 feet is a broader restriction, not just on this stretch of Mount Rushmore Road, but in the commercial districts.
Right. Our central business district is where we promote and encourage high-rise buildings. And certainly, this would be considered that design element. The question before you is this the right introduction for this type of development along Mount Rushmore Road? I would anticipate that if you do approve this, or if council approves it, we'll see similar development to some degree along Mount Rushmore Road. And is it your preference to ensure those view sheds, keep it at a maximum of 45 feet, or is this the area that you want to make those allowances and allow additional heights?
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is such a substantial change in what we've seen along Highway 16. This is like everybody said, this is an entrance to our city. We've got a comprehensive plan. We've got future land use plans that show we want to minimize the impact of really tall buildings along the stretch of road. I think everybody along the road that have been built have complied with that. I understand, the one that we did allow some height on, but it was set down lower, and that makes a difference because you can look out there and it still blends with the rest of the construction that's along Highway 16. To have such a tall building right now would stand out. You'd notice it. I mean, it would be too much for most people, I think, at least me. I think it will definitely make a difference in the way the corridor is established. If this is passed, it would make a substantial difference in the way the rest of the road would be constructed. I think other people would definitely be allowed to increase. They might not go to 10 stories, but they'd go to 8, or they'd take advantage of the fact that we've already allowed one to do this. I worry about the relationships that are going to happen down the road. I just think this is not something that we want to have in our corridor. I think we do a disservice to the other people who have maintained that integrity of that corridor. And as an entrance to Rapid City, I think we need to vote no. I know I'm going to vote no on this because of the height. I think the idea of having a nice condominium up there, I think is a great idea. And if it was even set back farther in a lower setting like Black Hills Corp is, that would make a difference. But I think you can't get past the fact that 10 stories is going to be a tower out there. So I'm just going to vote no, and I just wanted everybody to know why. Thank you.
Mike Gallagher.
Yeah, I kind of concur. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with what Karen and Mike are saying. This is just a little bit too much for me. You not only have a high building, but you got on top of a ridge. And I was driving into town the other day from another area and just looking out there and thinking, what would that look like with the big tower on top of that hill? And I prefer natural skylines to fabricated ones, if you will, or buildings. So that's where I'm coming from as well. This is just too much. It's on top of a hill, and it would really stick out too much in my mind. So I'd also be in opposition to this. Thank you.
All right, other questions or comments on item number 27?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So you have options here. You can approve with the stipulations as noted, which would grant the 2 height exceptions. You could approve but deny the 2 height exceptions, which means they could do the project, but they would have to maintain a 45-foot maximum height. Or you could just deny the project in its totality. So when I hear you folks say that you have to deny the project, I think what I'm hearing you say is you're in support of the project, you're not in support of the height exception. So I might recommend that you recommend to approve it with stipulations 1 and 2 being revised to say that the height exceptions be denied, if that is the desire of the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Vicki. Karen?
Vicki, I have a question as far as the other developments, say, that are across the road. I don't know how high Security First Bank is, but I do notice that even now, and it's not constructed yet, but I notice that's pretty high. Do you know what the height of that is? Is that 45 feet?
I know it's less than 45 feet. We did meet on that site when they were bringing that project forward, but it did not require a variance of any sort.
Okay. I guess that's part of the thing. I understand the idea of lowering the height back down to 45 feet, but I don't know how that would look, in conjunction with the other properties that are out there. So, it's hard for me to say, yeah, that sounds good. So, thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'm also kind of struggling with the height for a couple different reasons, but, part of it is with, taller buildings, you actually have, it can be more affordable, and you're using, you're actually it's a higher intensity use, which means, you know, the environmental impacts are a little bit lower, you know, things like that. But on, you know, at the same time, this is so close to the road that if it was on a different property where it was set back further, I think I would feel more comfortable with the height itself. And I don't actually dislike tall buildings. I think they're interesting too. But yeah, that's just my comment.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So here several years ago, we brought forward a proposal to the Planning Commission and the Council to potentially raise the height that's allowed in general commercial to 60 feet. There was a huge pushback from this community. It wasn't the image that they wanted of our city. And as urban planners, we appreciate what Kyle is trying to do. You know, it just does change the image of our city when you drive in and you see these tall, sleek buildings. I don't know if 10 stories and 8 stories would be appropriate outside of our downtown core, but I do believe that we need to revisit our height limitation in general commercial specifically, and that's something that we'll be working on going forward. Again, it does create affordability. It allows for additional parking. It doesn't take up as much pavement then, and we get to preserve our green spaces. But for today, looking at the ordinance that we have before us, and because the exceptions are 8 foot and 10 foot, what's before you is, do you grant those or not?
Thanks, Vicki. I'm just going to interject here quick for general comment from myself. I'm more in favor of density. I don't think Rapid City can continue to grow, and with all the people moving to this area, we are going to continue to grow. We can't grow out. At some point, utilities, roadways won't be sustainable, continuing to take over more prairie and more of our hills. It won't be a manageable city unless we create some density. And so that's something that I consider greatly on items like this. Tim?
Thank you. I just wanted to throw in a little bit. We've had a number of, from a fire department perspective on tall buildings like this, we actually support this type of development for a couple of reasons. Is that when you get above a certain height level, the construction type changes. It turns into more of a steel and concrete type of structure, which from our perspective makes it a bit safer building, much easier for us to manage. So from densities and building types, we certainly support this type of thing. I understand we're not part of the height discussion overall, but I know it has been asked of us whether or not this creates concerns for the fire service, and it does not. These buildings are built to provide us a better ground to protect the public and stuff from than what we'd normally have in a normal 4-story structure of all wood type construction. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Rachel, I still have a light up from you.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to point out too that we have so many concerns about traffic. You know, in pretty much every application we look at, people talk about how bad the traffic is. And part of traffic being bad is that we have all this sprawl, that the more sprawl you have, the longer it's going to take you to get anywhere that you actually want to go. And when you have taller buildings, higher intensity use, you have less sprawl, and so it helps a little bit with that. I don't know if it's too premature for me to make a motion to extend the meeting past 9, since we have 15 minutes until then.
Sure. I would say that, actually, let's try to get through this item first, and then we'll make some changes. Mike Kwasny.
I just want to make it clear that I am not against tall buildings. I think we are going to have to go up. I definitely think that there's places in this community that we will need to go up with some of our building. I am definitely not against that. I just would prefer in this area to the entryway, it's just not the place. And so I would hope that we can, I think tall buildings are coming, and I think they're necessary. I just not here.
I don't have any more lights up, so Mike, would you care to make that a motion? Vicki gave us some ideas along those lines.
I would make it a motion to the second where the height restriction is not permitted.
Chair?
Vicki?
If I might, to approve the initial plan development with the stipulation 1 and 2 revised to deny the height exceptions.
Exactly. That's what I said.
Okay, and Karen, so Mike made the motion to approve the initial plan development, but deny the exceptions 1 and 2, which cover the height exceptions for the 2 towers. And Karen seconded that motion. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to understand, again, the pictures will not do is not going to do this project justice. It's just an example. I remember when we had the concern about the height restriction across Highway 16 on the other side of 16. And I'm trying to understand why, again, we're so concerned about this height restriction, but we weren't concerned about the other locations. Now, Rachel made a great point in that, you know, we have population density that can be put into this area that would better service. Right across the street, we have the fire department. And so if we want to continue to sprawl, and I think that could be a problem for us eventually. So I'm not overly concerned about this height restriction. It doesn't make any sense for us to say no, based on the fact that this may be an access point from the Southern Hills. So I'm not in favor of restricting the heights on this project. I'd like to see it go forward just as the developers planned. Thank you.
All right, Mike Kwasny?
With respect to Vince, we actually did fight the height on everything pretty much that has gone through here. It was a discussion. There's been a lot of discussion on the height, and I think it's important that it be noted that height has always been something we've talked about. So I just feel, again, I'll reinstate that I think there's a place in our community where we can put these high towers, and I think if it were down in a lower area, even along this road, there's apartment buildings going down Catron, and something like that could fit in where it doesn't take away the view shed. There's places that this could suffice, but we've consistently brought up height in this area, and I would just hope that we continue to do so.
Mr. Chair,
Vince?
I need to respond. With respect, Mike, yes, we are concerned about height restrictions. And yes, we did debate that before. But you didn't answer my question. You didn't tell me why this particular location is going to impede the aesthetics to entering into and leaving our city. So I'm still not in favor of the restrictions.
Karen?
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing, and maybe that would help Vince in the discussion. We have a comprehensive plan that the city's adopted and the council has approved, and part of that is along Highway 16. We want to make sure that the future land use plan shows that we want to make sure that this corridor is not hurt in any way by buildings or whatever, because we want that view shed that's along Highway 16, and that was part of the reason why we did the future land use plan and the comprehensive plan. So to change that, you're saying, I don't care what the comprehensive plan says, I think this is okay. And to me, it's not okay. If we want to change the comprehensive plan and go back through and say, let's relook at Highway 16 and say, okay, let's start building tall buildings and make it a different city. It's still far enough away from downtown that I think it should have that same view shed, that same natural look to the area, even though you have buildings out there, but it still looks like we're in South Dakota, I guess. And so that's why I think we should deny the height.
Thank you, Karen. The motion on the floor is to approve the initial plan development, but deny the 2 requested height exceptions. For Kyle, I'm going to please be brief on your comments.
I would just make one comment that if the height exception is integral to this project, so if we're going to not allow the height, I prefer that the entire development be denied.
Fair enough.
I'll defer to the city attorney. I don't know if that's the best direction in case we get challenged on this. If you are in support of the project, but just the height, I would encourage you to continue on with the motion that you originally made.
Kinsley?
I think given the applicant's desire here, I think the planning commission can go either way with it in this instance, so.
Well, we'll leave it up to the motion maker then.
He still has the option, if he doesn't like the height restriction thrown out, he has the option to not do it. So I think we should just stay with it and go forward.
Mr. Chair, and more importantly, he can appeal your decision to council regardless if you approve it or deny it. If he doesn't like any stipulation, he can appeal it. So that should get Kyle what he needs to get to council.
Okay.
Just real quickly, and
Kyle?
I apologize, I know this is getting long. The reason for the full denial would not be to set up any kind of precedent or anything. It would be simply because we don't want to have this designation for this development on that property if we're not going to go forward with the height exception. So I just prefer that it all be taken off if we're not going to approve it.
Okay, one more option, Mike.
Okay, with that said, I would go with then deny.
Okay, so you'd make a substitute motion
Substitute motion to deny.
And Mike Gallagher seconded that substitute motion. Any discussion on the substitute motion to deny item number 27? And Mike G. Sorry, just making notes. Haven.
Well, it does kind of put us in a quandary, I guess, because, yeah, you know, overall, I think it's a good project. I guess I'm not in favor of the height exception, and I thought the original motion was certainly acceptable to me. I'm a little hesitant to vote to deny the application because I think it is a good project except for the height.
Okay. Other comments on the motion? All those in favor of denial of item number 27, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? We'll do a roll call.
My apologies on the delay. Braun,
No.
Bowman, Caesar,
Hold on a second. Ask Ballman again.
Bowman, Caesar, Gallagher, Herr, Quasny, Stuck, Vidal.
4-4, right?
5-4, isn't it?
I have 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's 5-4. Motion passes 5
All
to
right.
4, or 5 to 3. There was 3 noes. Raise your hand if you voted no.
Can we do a recall?
Oh, it is a 4-4. If it's tied, then it failed.
Okay. And a tie, it fails.
Kinsley,
Kinsley?
tie vote, the motion fails.
Motion fails.
Okay. Mike?
Then I would go back to the original, the denial of height and accept the development?
Over.
It's over? Are we done then?
Yeah, if
Okay.
this is a tie vote and they, go ahead.
Yes, we go back to the original motion and vote on that one.
Okay. So the original motion was to approve the initial plan development, but not grant the height exceptions listed in 1 and 2 in those stipulations.
No, he's hoping to.
Any discussion on that motion? And please continue to jump in with parliamentary procedure or anything like that. That's not my forte, but we'll call a vote on that original motion. All those in favor of the original motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, the applicant would like to withdraw the application. If you would just acknowledge that and maybe make that your motion.
Okay.
Make a motion.
All right. Karen made the motion to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal of item number 27. And Haven seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to withdraw or acknowledge the withdrawal? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to acknowledge withdrawal carries.
I need a continuation for the...
All right, now we need to continue after 9 o'clock if we're willing. We may need to take a short break to allow people to
Let's do that,
review.
Mr. Chair.
Can I have a motion to take a recess?
To recess?
5 minutes?
Yeah, as well as extend past 9 o'clock. Aaron made the motion to recess for 5 minutes and extend past 9 o'clock. Vince seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We're in recess. All right, I think we'll call the meeting back to order at this point. We left off after item number 27. Commissioner Herr and Commissioner Stuck appear to have exited. But we are back in session for item number 28.
Yes, please note that we still retain quorum, so we can proceed. Item 28 is a major amendment to a final plan development to allow a medical cannabis dispensary. This is located at Anamosa Street and Haynes Avenue. The subject property is identified in yellow. The dispensary is a 1,276 square foot area of this 3,292 square foot building, or approximately 1/3 of it, and it's about in the middle of the existing structure. As you can see from this aerial, there is a church to the west and a church across Haynes Avenue to the east. There is additional commercial to the north, and there is residential to the south. The zoning reflects that as well. This property is zoned general commercial. Future land use plan identifies it as mixed-use commercial. We see redevelopment of the area surrounding this as all residential. Haynes Avenue is a principal arterial street. Atlas Street is a Anamosa Street is a minor arterial street. This is the front elevation of the building, and then you can see in the lower left-hand side the site plan, and right in the middle is where the dispensary would go, showing that their landscaping and parking, those are not issues for this site. Again, more elevations of the building. You can see the sign in the window, seeing that they met that requirement. This is looking across Haynes at the church. You can see the additional residential behind that church. This is looking to the west, and that's the church that's adjacent to it directly. And this is looking south at some of the residential that's in the neighborhood. This is looking east on Anamosa. This is looking south on Haynes and north on Haynes. So when we reviewed this one, and as you've seen on so many that we've already discussed, we really looked at what's the conflict, and for this it's adjacent to residential, and there are two churches on either side. We did not feel that this site did have the separation that would be needed so that the use would not have an adverse impact on the character of the residential neighborhood. They share that same street for access. The churches on either side of this, one of them we know does entertain youth programs after school. There are youth that walk to that facility. I'm not sure if the other church does or not. We actually did get a letter of support from that pastor. However, knowing the activities that are there, it's not something that we could support from a land use perspective. The character of this neighborhood is certainly, we're transitioning into commercial right at this intersection. And everything south and east and west, other than the churches, is residential. So we felt that because there wasn't separation with streets where one use took access from a different street and this dispensary would be on a commercial corridor, even if they shared a rear lot line in common. In this case, they're interfacing. They're looking out at each other. And so we could not support this location. Based on the lack of adequate separation and the concern of the impact this would have on that neighborhood going forward, we are recommending that this item be denied.
Thank you, Vicki. I do have a speaker request on this item from Karen Cox. If you'd like to address it, Karen.
She actually brought up the steps, so I'm good.
Okay. Questions or comments on item number 28 from the commission? Okay.
Second.
Vince made the motion to deny the major amendment to the final plan development overlay in item 28. And Karen seconded that motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 29.
Mr. Chair, this one was inadvertently placed on non-consent and was meant to be on the consent agenda. We are recommending to approve with stipulations identified in the report.
Okay, item number 28, this is another conditional use permit for a dispensary.
Yes.
At 4260 Canyon Lake Drive. Does the commission wish to see a fuller presentation on this item? Okay, Karen made the motion to approve, and I should have said, there is a speaker request from Roger Tellinghusen, but waiving your chance to speak. So Karen made the motion to approve item number 29 with stipulations, and Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 30.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If we could look at items 30, 31, 32, and 33 together.
Yes.
Okay,
Please
they're
do.
all at the same location, just in
Okay.
different suites. So this is an application for 4 proposed medical dispensaries located at 2120 West Main. The zoning is general commercial. Future land use is mixed use commercial. It is on a principal arterial, West Main Street. Currently, the property has no landscaping. The applicant has offered to put some landscaping in, which is a great thing if the use is approved. There will need to be a developmental lot agreement due to some parking issues, but the property owner owns 4 adjacent parcels, so we don't see any issues with parking. And here's the proposed landscaping, some trees, some shrubbery, grasses. It would not be required for one of the suites approval because it wouldn't be enough of a change in use, but they are asking for 4 suites in this property, so they did provide the landscaping. So here is Suite 1, signage proposal, Suite 3, Suite 4, and Suite 5. Here is the location for Suite 1. This is the one that we are recommending approval on. And this is where the Suites 3, 4, and 5 are located at the back of the building. So this is looking east down West Omaha and also west down West Omaha. The reason that this property is a conditional use is due to the greenway behind the property. And we did note that this is primarily a floodway. It's not really a park, but it is considered a city park, and that's what triggered it. There is a bike path on the other side of Rapid Creek, and so we see that as a great buffer of the use. The only reason we pulled these off consent was because of the potential for saturation at a property. So in essence, if you were to get all 4 licenses, if they were to get lucky and draw all 4 licenses as this location, that would be a saturation of use that would affect the neighborhood. And so as such, we are recommending approval with stipulations for one of the locations, but not the other 3. I know we do have some speaker requests on this one, so I can answer any questions. And I think Vicki will probably chime in. This was one that staff debated for quite a while, so.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Vicki?
So there were 2 elements that came forward as a part of creating procedures for medical cannabis establishments. And in particular to dispensaries, I think that you guys have done a great job understanding the zoning ordinance. And the licensing part of it, which went to City Council, the decision was that we would limit the number of dispensaries in Rapid City to 15. And part of that was to ensure that we didn't have a saturation of use in any area of our community, and to preserve the integrity and the charm that our city currently has, and what we want to ensure goes forward. We know that there are those that may anticipate transferring licenses to other locations if they should pull more than 1 license at a specific location, but there's no guarantee in that, and that's certainly not what we do from our position from a land use perspective. If they're requesting it and it's approved, we need to ensure that is the right use for that neighborhood. Having 4 at this location, of the potential 15 that we would have in the city, could definitely change the character of this particular neighborhood. And as such, we can support 1. They could pick the suite, but we would not support the other 3.
Thank you, Vicki. Rachel, do you have a question for staff?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it, but just to clarify, staff has no opinion about which suite, it's just any one of them. And so if we took these all together and we voted on it with that intent, would it make sense to maybe ask the applicant if they had a preference which suite, and then we could just approve that one specifically and deny the others? Okay. Thank you, staff.
All right, I do have, and these were kind of the catch-all requests, but Kittrick Jeffries and Ryan Schwach both have speaker requests on this item, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, thank you to the Planning Commission. And my name's Ryan Schwach. I'm an attorney, Birmingham and Schwach Law Offices. I'm the attorney for Puffy's LLC. And I'm actually going to address all of them together too, and specifically the issue of units being next to each other. And so staff has denied 3 of these, but recommended 1. But the staff report for each location is actually the same. They all meet kind of the same elements, and as a conditional use, but for the fact that there are units nearby, they would recommend approval of all of them. And so I'm going to ask that you actually look at approving all of them, maybe with some type of compromise. And my observation when we talk about medical cannabis licensing is that Rapid City did not adopt any form of density standard when it came to medical cannabis. Instead, the regulatory framework that the city is using is a combination of a 15 dispensary cap and then a location limitation. But within the location limitations, there's actually no prohibition against dispensaries being by each other. That was specifically excluded. So the ordinance actually calls for saturation. And so when I look at the map of the green zone, I essentially see 3 large areas where dispensaries can be located. And these conditional use permit hearings are occurring because all of the applications, not just the 4 in front of you now, but all of the applications are close to the green zone, but they're also just close to a residential area. And so our park or a daycare. But for that closeness, these 4 units would all be approved if they were in the green zone. And so, in fact, in the green zone in Rapid City, you could, in theory, have 15 dispensaries in 15 units in a strip mall. So I don't think that saturation or dispensary, is an appropriate consideration. I think it's actually permitted and encouraged, and it's clearly part of the city's comprehensive plan for medical cannabis. And this is not true of everything in your zoning ordinance. On-sale liquor requires a density finding, actually. So for on-sale liquor, you have to show that the proposed use will not create an undue concentration of similar uses so as to cause blight. There's no similar consideration for medical cannabis. And so I don't think it's an appropriate consideration. We do want to be respectful of staff, and so I do have a written motion for each one of these, if you would be interested in it, that would allow for you to approve all 4, but no building permit could be issued on more than 1. And so what that would do would allow my client to have his provisional license, because this is just a provisional license. It's not the final one. He's still got to go to the state and get his annual, but it would allow him to get all 4 provisionals today, go to the state, and then, if he's lucky enough to get 2 drawn or at this one spot, because I think we're going to have a lot of apps in Rapid, he could address just having the 1 location there later. So.
Thank you, Mr. Schwach. Kittrick Jeffries, would you care to speak on this item?
I don't know if you want to, that's the...
We can keep it up here if you want. We'll see what they say. Thank you. And we as staff understand that they're trying to get their best shot at getting one of these coveted 15 licenses. When City Council did make that decision to put a cap on it, this was inevitable, that we were going to have multiple people. And we have it with permitted uses too, and you're going to see it on the next City Council agenda multiple times.
Thanks, Kelly. Mr. Jeffries, if you could identify yourself again.
Yep, Kit Jeffries. I represent Dakota Cannabis Consulting and Puffy's LLC. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you to all the staff for all your hard work. It's been a long and fun process, but I did want to just take a couple notes. First and foremost, if I could get clarity on which one was the approval, was it?
We just chose the first one that was entered in, so it would have been suite.
Unit 1.
Yep, Unit 1. And that's what, our take is we don't have a preference on this suite, but.
Okay. And the reality of the situation is we just don't know which unit would be drawn at the state lottery. We just don't know, and we can't go based off of guesses. So our ask would be to allow all of them the opportunity to go to the state lottery so that we have the opportunity to open a dispensary on that location if approved with the stipulations met. So appreciate your time. And again, thank you guys so much for your hard work. I know it's been fun, so appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Roger Tellinghusen, do you have a comment on this item?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I was working from a prior agenda, so my numbering when I filled out my speaker request was one number off, and so I apologize for that. I do not have any comments on this one. Thank you.
Well, if we get it wrong, just wave and I'll figure it out.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
Just another point of clarification. So when the licensing was approved, it was approved that you could get a license, one license at one location. And for us in zoning, that is per legally described property, for the subject property. But in the licensing world, that is per address. So if you've got a strip mall and you've got suites in it, or if you've got a commercial building and you want to increase your chances of getting additional provisional licenses into the state to increase your chances of having one pulled, you can have additional addresses put on that building and then submit an application for each of those addresses. We've got a city council member here. I think our intent was, we thought that there would be one license per location, and obviously because the word location is meaning address instead of legally described property, we're getting multiple applications on one subject property, one legally described property. And so that's kind of the challenge before you is, if you're looking at it from a land use perspective and you feel that it's right to have one dispensary at that property, then we would encourage you to act appropriately for that recommendation if that's what you support.
And that, again, is why we provided this CUP locations map that's got the numbering on it that shows those locations that you'll see on this meeting and also on the next meeting that do have multiple locations on the same property.
All right, Rachel, comments, questions?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see both sides of this, like in a sense, you know, obviously nobody wants like 4 dispensaries in one location. And whether this is a legally described location or what, I mean, I would say like each suite probably gets its own mail, so, but I don't understand, I don't know the technicalities there. And I understand that the applicant is just trying to increase their chances of actually getting, you know, conditional use permit and a license for this. So I think it's a really tricky one to me because, yeah, if we were just talking about someone just getting 4 in one spot, I would say, oh, absolutely not. But I think it's a kind of a good negotiation to say that a building permit shall not be issued on the other 3. I'm kind of leaning towards that, but I don't know what the language is, and I haven't had time to actually review that language. So that's kind of also tricky for me, so kind of in a quandary.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in front of Mike here and just piggyback on that. You made a comment, Vicki, that on the difference between definitions between licensing versus land use on addresses versus suites, essentially. I'm guessing all of us up here have that question burning. As written right now, what is the correct way to review these? Do we review based on the parcel or based on the address?
We accepted the applications because, based on the address, that identifies a different location, and the licensing is you can only secure one license per location. However, from a land use perspective, whether this was any use that required a conditional use within the zoning, would you put 4 of those conditional sensitive uses on one property? That's how we brought it to you. And I appreciate it. I mean, this is really important to these folks. The more provisional licenses they can get submitted to the state, the higher the chance is that one would get pulled in those 15 that are going to be allocated. I can appreciate that this is very important. And on permitted sites, they're going to do that. On conditional sites, where we're already within those separation issues, from a staff's perspective, we feel that one opportunity for that site would be appropriate. And certainly you are welcome to work with the applicant if you think differently. But from our perspective and a land use perspective, we would like to see no more than 1 dispensary at this location.
Thank you. Mike, I think you're up.
Well, the lottery, I think, set up this situation, caused this problem. I got a couple things. I guess we have a car lot situation going on where we can put all the car lots together, too. I mean, that's something that you could think about. And I guess I have a question. I go to the attorney if I could.
Please.
And where does this stand? I mean, maybe it's illegal and we really can't not have all of these considered because of the lottery situation that was set up and the way we have it set up. I don't know where legally we're at.
Kinsley?
Mr. Chair, I think they can all be considered because under the state regs, locations are based upon ingress and egress, and there being sufficient ingress and egress per location. So I think it's okay for you to consider the different suites as separate locations. However, I think it then goes back to the land use perspective of whether you actually want to grant something like this based upon the comp plan and criteria for review for a CUP.
Well, the lottery situation kind of set up this where it makes it hard to say you can't because what they're doing is they're getting more votes in. They want probably 1 location anyhow because they probably won't be able to find the help anyhow. So they want 1 location, and I understand by putting in the 4 that they own, this gives them 4 options for this. And I don't know where we stand, whether we can deny them that opportunity because the lottery is set up that way. So I guess I'm a little concerned where we can go legally on this.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Your reason for approving or denying this, really set that state lottery aside. You're right. If there was no limit on the licensing, similar to cultivation and manufacturing, this wouldn't be happening. It's because of everyone's trying to increase their odds of pulling just 1 license somewhere within the state's lottery. But let's set that aside. The recommendation that we bring to you today is after reviewing the criteria for a conditional use, the city's comprehensive plan, the criteria set forth for a medical cannabis, and then just looking at whether or not we would put any conditional use at that magnitude at this location. That's what we're bringing forward, and that's what we're asking you to take action on today.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so let's say you win the lottery, you get all four. What's to say that we can't prevent them from having all four? We can limit it to one location and the other three go, let's say they win all four of them. So at that point in time, isn't it a solution just to say based on our locale requirements and stipulations, then that's it. You can only have one license even if you win the lottery for all four.
So, Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
what their attorney had offered is a compromise at the end of his presentation that said, if you approve all four of them, which lets them then put 4 provisional licenses in on this property, they will concur to only pull a building permit for 1 dispensary at this location. So if you approved all 4, didn't matter what location, but just had a stipulation that said only 1 building permit can be issued for this legally described property, it lets them get 4 applications in for the drawing, but it would only allow them 1 building permit to put a dispensary at this location.
I think that honors our commitment to the way we set this up and the green spaces that we were allowing. I think as long as that's part of the contention.
Okay. And I don't think that they ever intended to put 4 dispensaries here, as the state is working on whether or not and how they're going to allow someone to transfer a license. And we're still waiting to see what the end result is on that. But we do anticipate, regardless of which sites get approved, if someone is fortunate enough to get a license drawn, in most likelihood, if they've got 5 sites and they only get 1 license, you're going to see them move it to their preferred site. And you may get more applications before you as this goes forward. I think that would be a compromise that we would be okay with as well.
Okay,
that
thank
the
you.
4 locations be approved with the stipulation that only 1 site be allowed and 1 building permit be issued at that location for 1 dispensary.
Thank you.
Karen?
Okay, so if you would do that on each 4 items, you'd have to put a stipulation that says you can only have 1. How would you describe that?
So it would be to approve all 4 with the stipulations noted in the first application, with the additional stipulation that out of those 4 locations, a building permit shall only be permitted at 1 site, to limit 1 dispensary on this legally described property.
Okay, so you'd take all 4 as a package instead of individually. Okay. I understand the issues and I understand why people are doing what they're doing. For me, if we're looking at it from a planning standpoint, as a planning commission, we're supposed to look at land use. And if that's the case, then we're looking at not the licensing or how you submit them, but just at the land use. And why would we allow for anything like that? I mean, if it was an alcohol request, would we allow 4 different alcohol licenses or, conditional use permits on that same site? As a land use, I don't think we'd ever do that. But because this is a new lottery and it's all brand new, I think that's why they're doing this. But for me, it just goes against my, background, I guess. And I can't support just one. I can support 1, but not all 3. So that's just where I'm coming from.
And I apologize to the other folks. I'm going to butt in again. These parcels where it's a situation where it would be a tenant of a landlord, I mean, when we say we limit it to 1 building permit for this parcel, what if somebody else applies for another suite, another organization comes to an agreement with the landlord and then applies? I guess that seems problematic to limit based on 1 company's group.
This is a conditional use. If someone else, again, right now, the time to get conditional use permits in before you is gone. You'll see some more on your December 9th meeting. But those applications are locked and loaded. These are the only ones in. We anticipate all 15 will be issued by the state. It'll be a while before the city council ups the number of licenses based on our population growth of 1 license for every 5,000 people within our city limits. So, but let's say 10 years from now our population grows and we get a couple more licenses allowed, and someone wants to put another conditional use at this location. You would then have the opportunity to review it and say, okay, we allowed 1 dispensary there already, it's operating. Should we allow a second one? It would come before you. Does that help, Eric?
Yep, it does. Mike Kwasny.
So then the question I have, thank you, Mr. Chair. If he wins, this organization wins all 4 of these, do they own it for that property, or do they own the license, and then we get into this, now I can sell all the 3 that I don't use?
Mr. Chair? So the state issues the license specific to the location, but the state is allowing them to be transferred, we believe. Justin, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Justin Williams, Assistant City Attorney, that is correct. The state in Administrative Rule 4490-0303 is allowing the transfer of the licenses. So in theory, if all 4 were drawn, they could have a building permit, put 1 here, transfer the 3 licenses to some other location in the city.
Could they also transfer it, in other words, sell it to somebody else, is what they could do?
Based on city's licensing, yes, they can. You can transfer a license, and we do have Councilman Weifenbach here, and they made sure that was a provision that was allowed. Maybe we should hear from him.
Councilman, if you were willing?
Yep. I'm willing to talk. I mean, there's been a lot of time and effort that went into it. This is obviously one of those we didn't catch, okay, that we didn't think through well, of somebody putting in multiple licenses for one specific, as you would say, not maybe a postal address, but one specific building, okay? But in the hand, I think has come up the fact that they could have simply afforded to go and create 4 different LLCs and do the same thing as was mentioned there. Each business could have put in for that same location. You guys, I just listening to the conversation, the one thing, these are conditional use permits, so they're either up or down, and it kind of scared me when the lawyer started on that path of saying either you approve them all or well, then you could actually even deny them all. I mean, so you got to be careful going that direction too, because it's a conditional use permit because of the area that it's in. So I guess it's up to you guys. I hate to sit here and influence you. I know that when we made these rules, it came to our attention after the fact when we did the casinos, and you've seen what happened there. They all applied, for casino licenses, and they had specific units, and they get them, and then they transfer them, okay? So that's the reality of it. I mean, it's whether you approve all 4, deny all 4, or approve 1, or add the stipulation of saying, they're not going to have 4 of them. That just comes to sense. There's specific common sense will tell you the reason that they did this was to increase their odds at winning the lotto, and I think they would admit that to you clear as day. But was it legal for them to do it? It sounds like from what the legal counsel is saying is that it is. So I can guarantee you if I'm sitting on that council or wherever on the administrative position or something, we would definitely take a bigger, deeper look at that. But still, there's almost no way to stop it, because they could just form another company and call it Ron Weifenbach LLC and apply for either that, the next unit right there or whatever. So I think it's a quagmire. I know that we tried to do this as a zoning type thing, so a lot of this wouldn't happen, so eliminate a lot of it. There's probably been enough licenses that have gone through without conditional uses that maybe we could have considered not even offering conditional uses. We did that because there was concerns about geographical areas that, say, West Rapid, which is a little bit more complicated to get a license in because of the zoning, because there's a lot of a lot of park, which I noticed today that it was called a greenway, not a park. So I appreciate that. So I guess I don't want to influence either way. I can just tell you our thought process that went into it. It was something that kind of came up, but, you know, this is, I don't know how many of these you're going to come across, because there's probably a whole other wave of applications coming in, and anybody out there, if it's not too late for them to get theirs in, will probably do the same. So I know it puts you in a precarious situation, but overall, watching the process here today and watching what could have transpired, I don't think it's that bad. So, I mean, if you understand that there's no way that he's going to put 4 of them in one building. I mean, it just ain't going to happen. I mean, he wants to increase his odds to win that lotto because of the 15. We had looked at going from unlimited to going to 1. I think we came down to looking at doing 35 of them, and then we compromised. We could get an agreement with the council at 15. That's how that number transpired, or 1 per every 5,000, I believe, is what finally transpired. So I hope that sheds a little light, and any decision you guys make will be the right one. So
Thank you for that perspective. Really
Mr.
appreciate
Chair,
that.
Just
Kelly,
to let you know, so we are done offering the opportunity to get a conditional use permit. The time for the next hearing will put us into January. The state's deadline is December 31st. So you're going to see 2 on today's, this item right here where there's 4. The next item on the agenda that we're going to look at, there's 2 suites in one existing facility. And then at the next Planning Commission, there will be 1 that has 5, 1 that has 4, and I believe 1 that, nope, that's it. I think there'll be 2 more that have multiple suites as a conditional use permit application. So if staff has, if Planning Commission has direction for how we should handle those next ones before we write those reports, that would be really helpful so that we're not wasting, everyone's time discussing them if there's some different direction.
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. Rachel?
Thanks for letting me jump in on this, because I do have questions after this discussion. But so if we were to approve this kind of as the applicant is kind of suggesting, which I do want to ask him later after this discussion, about his verbiage there. But if we're going to approve this and, we say kind of basically with a stipulation that only 1 building permit will be issued for the 4 conditional use permits, and let's say by some luck of the draw, literally, that he gets, 4 licenses from the state, he's still going to have to come back and get conditional use permits for other locations. Is that correct? Because we've already said that he can't have, 4 at this location.
So if they should draw more than 1 at this location, and you identify, and I would just say that only 1 dispensary shall be operational on this legally described property, period, that covers it, they could transfer it to a permitted site, and you would never see it. They could sell it to someone else that didn't get one, who wanted to go through went through this process, but they didn't get drawn. Maybe that's their preference. If they find another site that's conditional, then you'll see it from them.
Okay.
Many options.
Yeah, that addresses my comment. Thank you.
Vince?
Actually, that's what I needed to get cleared up, because obviously we do have a comprehensive plan, and I want to respect that. And I want to make sure that we're not going outside to where we lose that perspective of where we're trying to get overall. So, thank you.
All right, Rachel, back to you.
So this is actually, aside from this part of the conversation, I was just curious if the applicants had their kind of suggested motion that I could take a quick look at. Although I think Vicki also, described a pretty smooth way of approving this.
Kelly. Just read it.
What I did, I wrote a written motion for each application that has this kind of compromise language in it for the benefit of you guys, so you could just adopt the written motion if you wanted to.
And Vicki's language stating that it would be for the legal location, only 1 medical cannabis dispensary would be operational. And I think that's, to simplify it, this one discusses units 3, 4, and 5 at the same address, and I think making it just a general blanketed statement saying that there's only one allowed to be operational at the legal location would suffice.
And I wanted to maybe go back to Kinsey and see how she feels about that.
Thank you. Just so that we don't have to deal with anyone else, even though the time has passed right now for any applications for CUPs, I would suggest something to the effect of, if you're considering 21 UR 024, for instance, putting a phrase that says, if a building permit for a medical cannabis establishment pursuant to 21 UR 021, 21 UR 022, or 21 UR 023 is issued, this CUP is revoked.
I like it. So in essence, that number you have to take every item separately, and you have to list out the different file numbers with each one, and we can help you do that right now, but that does revoke that conditional use permit, and it gets it off the property, so that if someone else wants to come into that suite, they don't have to do an amendment to that conditional use.
So I
Thank you. I
can
think
help
that's-
read that off if
Yes, please.
that's something that the Planning Commission wants to adopt with each one. So if you want to take each item separately at this point, that might be a thing to do.
I would say we go through the rest of the comments first. Mike Quasney.
The reason I guess we're really looking at this the way we are is as we go forward in December 9th, the meeting, it sounds like we're going to have some more of these. It would be great to have established what we're doing going forward, and then hopefully the meeting can be short, sweet, and to the point. And so if we can get it established, what it is that we're doing, I think that'd be great.
Okay. Vince?
Kelly, what numbers are these?
Okay.
Item numbers or UR numbers?
All right, so currently I agreed to take items 30, 31, 32, and 33 concurrently. I'm going to say we're going to consider these items separately.
So, again,
Vicki?
next time we'll present them to you accordingly, but for this case, to say that based on the language that Kinsley just said, instead of inserting the different file numbers each time, and we'll make sure that our staff who's doing minutes has got all this in writing, but that they are operational in compliance with these regulations. And Kinsley, if you could just read the first part of that again.
You'd take each individual item number and say that if a building permit for a medical cannabis establishment pursuant to, and then list off the three other item numbers, is issued, this CUP is revoked.
So can we, just for today in this meeting, can we say that it's the intent that they are going to take action on all four, but to have that language inserted in in all of them, that if a dispensary is issued on one, the other, or a building permit is requested for one, the other three are revoked?
Let's make sure that the applicant fully understands that.
Mr. Jeffries?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, Kit Jeffries with Dakota Cannabis Consulting and representing Puffy's LLC. We fully understand. Thank you.
Mr. Tellinghusen?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I'm not I didn't indicate that I needed to speak on this particular application, but I just have a question. How does this work then insofar as the state lottery is concerned? Let's say they are lucky enough that all four of these sites are drawn, and you've limited them now to only being able to use one. What happens to those other three? Do they go back into the lottery? Because obviously I represent a client that has 4 locations pending, but they're all separate locations. And so I'm confused and I'm concerned. And so I think if you're going to add stipulations to this particular application and applications like it that have multiple applications at one site, let's be honest, then there should be some ability for, if they're all selected, that they agree that those go back into the lottery, so to speak, so that persons like my client aren't unfairly marginalized, if you will.
Mr. Chair?
Well, I guess I'm going to respond a little. I don't think we have any say or any ability to make any suggestions about the lottery situation. That's our struggle, and that's what every commissioner up here has been struggling with, is this difference in definition between parcel and suite address.
Right, currently, they could be transferred, the applicant could transfer them to a different location. They could sell it to one of your clients. But we do have Justin here, who used to work for the Department of Health, that has had his thumb on how the state was putting together. So would the state have an issue with, if they pulled more than one on a legally described property, and our planning commission has issued them, limited them to operating only one, would there be an issue with transferring that or selling that license?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So they would be allowed to potentially petition the state to transfer the license to another location. However, there's also a separate administrative rule in state law that requires that they are operational within a year of obtaining the license. And so they could transfer it to a new location, but they still have to operate that license within a year. And if not, then it, I believe, is automatically revoked. The state license is.
Thank you.
But I will just add to that, too, that there would not be a process to put it back into the lottery, because the lottery is a one-time thing.
And I'm just going to add a comment here with what Mr. Weifenbach said about the option for the same owner to form multiple companies to apply for multiple suites in a building. Really clarified my thinking personally on this. I'm not in favor of having multiple suites in the same building for the same use in this instance. However, as far as applications go, there's no difference. It's simple to get an LLC on the state website and print out the certificate. So, Mr. Telling.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question, I guess, and maybe it's more directed at your legal counsel. Let's fast forward, we get to the lottery and all four of these sites are in the lottery. After the first one is drawn, wouldn't that automatically disqualify the other three by virtue of the condition that you're putting on the approval of these four in the lottery?
I'll see if the legal wants to take a guess at that, but we have no idea.
No, it's not within our realm of authority.
Yeah, I don't think that there would be a process to remove those other ones. So, because the restrictions at the city level would be about building permits, it sounds like, according to the discussion today. But the license or certificate from the state level is a separate thing, and they have to operate the certificate within a year, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be at that location based on the ability to transfer it to a new location.
I don't have the rule right in front of me, but I know there's a specific rule that the Department of Health has approved that says that any application that reaches the state level has to have a certification from the local planning or department, so to speak, that it complies. And so would there be some kind of notation on that
Mr. Chair,
report that goes to the state?
That is a good point. So there could, the local municipality has to issue a certificate of compliance saying that those locations would comply with the city ordinances. So, that's what we'd be talking about with the conditional use permit. Then the city would sign those certificates of compliance. I guess in theory, there could be maybe a process where those certificates of compliance would also be automatically revoked if one is drawn, perhaps. I don't know what that would look like, I guess.
Mr.
Well,
Chair,
we are nowhere
we're
near
going
a
way into the
courtroom
weeds here.
Yeah.
That's things we can work on. That really doesn't have anything to do with the conditional use permit that we're considering today. And good points. We issue final zoning letters of compliance. These that have multiple applications on one legally described property, if it's your desire to approve all four, with the limitation that only one dispensary be operated from the property. And my suggestion is for today, maybe that just be your stipulation. You take all four together, you approve them with the stipulations identified in the first application, and the caveat that only one dispensary shall be located from this property. When we're issuing those final zoning letters in compliance that do get forwarded on to the state, we can make it very clear that on this legally described property, that there were 4 conditional use permits approved to allow one dispensary. And then what the state does with that is their decision.
All right. Well, anybody have a motion at this point?
Well.
Oh, all right. Mike Kwasny. So, to clarify, we still haven't quite committed to considering one at a time or all four, or should we do this one at a time, do you think, Vicki?
My suggestion was to do all four.
Okay.
And state that the 4 conditional use permit applications are being approved with the stipulations identified in 21 UR 021, with the additional stipulation that only one dispensary shall be allowed to be operated from this legally described property. And we'll write that up, and we'll try to be more consistent at your next meeting and maybe lean more towards Kinsley's language.
Okay, so Mike Kwasny made the motion to approve items 30, 31, 32, and 33 per the stipulations as listed in item 21 UR 021, with the additional stipulation that only one dispensary be allowed to operate at this legally described parcel?
Property.
Property. All right. Kinsley, Justin?
I just wanted to clarify whether we're going with language that talks about the CUP being revoked or, okay.
We write them so they don't need to be revoked anymore. Any permitted use is just a building permit.
Okay.
We've been doing that for several years now.
Okay.
Can I get a second to Mike's motion? Rachel seconded Mike's motion. Vince, you have comments on where we're going?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure we understand that what we're saying is that we have no input on the state's decisions on how they run the lottery. So because we have no input on that, I understand the concerns that there are other applicants that may not have the same opportunity. What we want to make sure that we do is maintain our comprehensive plan as to where we put these locations. We're trying to make it fair, and it may not work out to everybody's desire, but at this point, based on the fact that they still have a year, if they do win in the lottery and do get that permit from the state, they still have that year to get it going. So at this point in time, I'm voting in favor of the motion.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think we're kind of looking at this when we're talking about land use. We're like, well, I mean, we would never approve 4 here, so why would we approve 4 right now? And to me, I think the way that we're approaching it, we're really saying more like we would approve any one of these locations. And I think maybe shifting that maybe helps kind of form a little bit. It's still in compliance with the comprehensive plan and the intent of conditional use permits, which is to, not have an undue concentration, even if that's not technically, that is the spirit of it. So yeah, I just wanted to point out, we are okay with any one of these locations, but not all 4. And I think that's clear, but I just think it's a little bit of a twist that maybe helps.
I've got one more speaker request up for Eric Hikas, who's not here. Is that you, Mr. Weifenbach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. appreciate all the efforts you guys have gotten. Nice thing about being here is if any of these are challenged, they go to the council. I can bring your sentiments to that council meeting and say this is what transpired during that meeting. They can watch it on video. There is opportunity for people that don't agree with the process or whatever, as my understanding is that anybody can challenge these decisions that you're making today. They can bring their efforts to the council and say this is why we want to challenge them. So I think that gives you a caveat in the quagmire that's been created somewhat. I think it'll go through the system. I think you guys have done a great job vetting it. A lot of questions have been answered, and so nobody's going to get shortchanged. If somebody doesn't agree with the process, they have another chance to appeal your decisions. So, thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve items 30, 31, 32, and 33 as previously stated. Are there other comments on this motion, questions? Everyone clear? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 34.
So I'm not sure how we want to potentially handle this. This is the same situation. The reason this was pulled off consent was because there are two suites located in the same property. I'll run through the slides really quick for you so you can get an idea of where the location is. Okay, so this is located at 1401 West Omaha, and it's going to be units 100 and 200. I'll show you on this map. Unit 100 is in this area right here. You can see my hand moving. And unit 200 is approximately back here. The door for 200 would be right here. The property is zoned general commercial, mixed-use commercial future land use, so it is an appropriate use as far as the zoning goes. It's located again on a principal arterial. This is the site plan. They would need to submit a parking plan if they were to have two locations on this, but again, following the direction you're going, it wouldn't trigger parking or landscaping if there was just one use that was changing on the property. This is an example of their sign location for Suite 100, and then again for Suite 200. There's notice of their conditional use that's posted. This is just another view of where the second location would be. This is looking west, down West Omaha, and then also east. This is a developed commercial corridor. The reason that this one is a conditional use is due to the park across West Omaha. It's a 6-lane median divided park. We felt like that was a good enough buffer to support a medical cannabis dispensary in this location.
All right, so the question we have as a commission, we can take these separate or take 34 and 35 together. I would lean towards taking them together. Okay. Consider 34 and 35 together. Rachel?
My memory is a little hazy, but was there an issue with the building encroaching on the DOT's right-of-way at this location?
So on an older project, when they did this construction, they actually had to tear off part of the front of that building to get the right-of-way needed for the 6-lane. And the DOT and that business owner negotiated however they did. So there's no issues with this proposed use at that location for the DOT. They've given no comment that there's a problem.
I wanted to make sure that we weren't approving, and I know it's kind of the same deal, either or, but we weren't approving something for a location that wasn't going to exist, because I couldn't remember the details there.
No, they cut 10 feet off the front of that building. So.
I am impressed, Mr. Chair, I am impressed that you would remember that. That was an issue for this property owner. But yeah, they did work with DOT, and Kelly noted, we routed every one of these to DOT, and they did not have an issue. And I believe those that themselves and the property owner have resolved the right-of-way issues as well. I think Kelly did a really good job presenting this one, guys. If it is your desire to take the two items together, We would recommend that you approve both items with the stipulations noted in 21 UR 028, with the added stipulation that only one medical cannabis dispensary shall be allowed to be operated from this legally described property.
That's my motion.
Oh. Karen made the motion as Vicky just stated. And Rachel seconded that motion. Karen, did you have anything else to add, or is that?
That's all I was
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of approving item number 34 and 35 per the stipulations in 21 UR 028 with the added stipulation that only one cannabis dispensary can operate at this legally described property, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 36.
Item number 36 is a conditional use permit to allow a medical cannabis dispensary. The property's location is at 2640 Mount Rushmore Road. You can see this parcel indicated here. It's at the intersection of Mount Rushmore Road and Cathedral Drive. This is a 1.4 acre lot that is currently developed with a convenience store, the existing Boyd's Mart pharmacy, and there's currently a car wash being constructed in this area. This item is a conditional use permit because of its adjacency to a high-density residential zoning district, which is developed with a residential apartment structure. You can see the zoning of the property here. It's zoned general commercial, and as far as adjacent land uses, you can see the high-density residential here and low-density residential here. This particular property is developed with a church. So because of those reasons, this location was not a permitted location, but instead a conditional use permit. Future land use of the property is mixed-use commercial, and the future land use of the adjacent property is urban neighborhood, suggesting that if the property were to be redeveloped in the future, it too would be residential. Major street plan shows Mount Rushmore Road is a principal arterial and Cathedral Drive is a minor arterial. Here's a site plan for the proposed development. They are showing that they can comply with landscaping and parking requirements. We don't have any concerns there. You can see the existing fueling station. This portion of the structure would continue to remain as a convenience store and fuel sales. And then the proposed dispensary is in this area with the entryway coming in off of Cathedral Drive here. And as you'll recall from the aerial, the high-density residential apartment structure is located here. Here showing their landscaping plan. Like I mentioned, we don't have any concerns with that element of the project. And these are the building elevations showing the Common Sense store. Here's their sign package. You can see the proposed business, CC Health, will have a wall sign that fronts out towards Cathedral Drive. And here is the floor plan showing the existing use to remain for the fueling station and retail sales and the dispensary in this portion. Here's some site photos. This is looking east from Cathedral Drive. You can see the conditional use permit sign was posted. This is looking north down Mount Rushmore Road. This is looking south down Mount Rushmore Road. Here we are standing within the lot line of the subject property looking across the street to this apartment development. You'll notice that there's a substantial amount of open green space that's used by the residents who live in that development. They use this area for there's a sidewalk that connects through there, and they'll spend time out there. There's park benches and various amenities that they use as the tenants of that building. And this is looking across Cathedral Drive to the adjacent commercial development on the other side of Cathedral Drive. Here we are standing in the subject property looking towards the entrance. This would be the entrance to the dispensary here. So in looking at this application, we really were most concerned with the property's proximity to that apartment structure. There is an existing chain link fence. However, with the nature of the lot line being right next to the apartment building in that open green space, we really felt that that use was not buffered. The activities of the proposed dispensary will be visible to the residents of that area from their windows overlooking that side of the property or while they're outside using that green space. We did note that from a transportation perspective, the customers coming in and out of the proposed dispensary will be using the same street, Cathedral Drive, to access the property as well. So in looking at this one, and as you're having seen several of these applications now, we looked at these on a case-by-case basis. In this instance, we felt that we found that the apartment structure was not adequately buffered as a use, and so we are recommending denial of this conditional use permit, and I will be available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Sarah. I do have a speaker request, I think, on this one from Roger. If you'd, again, identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roger Tellinghusen, representing the applicant, Moyle Petroleum. I think it's really, really important for you to recognize and accept that this is a very commercial area where this proposed use is being submitted. A pharmacy has been in this specific location for over 15 years, dispensing controlled substances, much more serious controlled substances than what's proposed with a medical cannabis establishment. When we talk about residences, it's also important, I think, to keep in mind that 73% of the voters in Rapid City alone voted to approve the dispensement of medical marijuana. 73%. I have the numbers I could share with you. So we just think that it's important to recognize that there is separation between this proposed location and the apartment building. I hope that visibility isn't an issue, because it'd be almost impossible to site a business like this within a half mile probably of this particular building, because it's 8 stories tall. If the location of the entrance to this proposed medical cannabis dispensary is an issue, my client has authorized me just today to say, we'll move the location of the front entrance to the other side of the building, so that the entrance would be on the west side of the building, fronting Mount Rushmore Street. That should remove the concern about the ability of residents from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, up through the 8th floors to be able to see what's going on. I think it's also important to remember that when it comes to lighting, signage lighting, LED lighting is not permitted, so it's going to be a very subdued signage package that will advertise the location of this particular business. Again, it's been a pharmacy for over 15 years, and what we're proposing to use it for is simply a very specialized pharmacy, and as such, we would ask the Commission to approve this particular application. I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for staff. We're talking about, I think we talked about this previously where, are we considering marijuana use as like a medical use, a recreational use, both, and then it gets kind of muddy, because when recreational actually comes to us, it was kind of expressed that this was written so that we would be essentially allowing recreational in the same locations as medical currently is. Not de facto, but that was kind of the intent of how it was written. But we are considering medical right now, and it is right by a pharmacy, and that is kind of a fascinating decision to say, well, we can't have medical marijuana right by a pharmacy in an area that's honestly like a heavy medical complex as well. I mean, there's so many medical buildings around there. And so this isn't necessarily determinate for me, but does anyone in the area sell alcohol? Either Boyd's Drugs, I don't know what that location they do, or the convenience store.
Yes, the convenience store does have an off-sale license for beer.
Okay, but that's quite a bit further away from
The convenience
apartments.
store is right adjacent to it.
It's in the same
Would you like
building.
me to answer the first question? So we wrote the zoning ordinance with the separation so that when medical cannabis does come forward, we don't anticipate that council is going to up the ante of licenses for dispensaries to any significant amount. But we want to make sure that these locations then are vetted properly. And this was hard for us too. But we have to remember that, granted, Boyd's Express is in there today. It's not a conditional use. It's a permitted use. These are conditional. This is sensitive material that our community is still getting accustomed to. And as a part of that, we have identified 500-foot separations to a very limited number of uses. You saw us previously on many items on your agenda today grant support when we saw that there was buffering. They didn't interface with each other. They had separate access. There was that visual break between them. In this case, we just couldn't get there. You couple that with the fact that the seniors do use that open space, and several of them do their shopping within that convenience store because they don't have vehicles and they don't travel much outside of the community. This one was difficult. Putting one at this location because of that housing project, it didn't seem to go in line with the ordinance, and we really questioned ourselves, if we don't back up these separations, why did we create them?
Sorry, just a follow-up question. I'm sorry. So, and it's hard to kind of tell the future, but just to clarify, when recreational does come around, do you anticipate us seeing or being able to approve a change of use from, and it's not technically a change of use, depending on how you look at it, from medical to recreational, or is it going to just de facto be if you have a medical license, you can also sell recreational?
I don't know if it's fair to the applicants for us to weigh recreational into this discussion. We'll have a working session with council. They'll give us the lead. We haven't done any of that yet. The application before you is for medical cannabis dispensary, and our recommendation is based on the ordinance in place.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might add, just for what it's
Don't
worth,
use
this
them.
might be kind of a
Yeah.
news flash for everybody. South Dakota Supreme Court just today issued a 77-page opinion affirming the circuit court decision which declared Amendment A unconstitutional. So we can take that off the table for now at least. Recreational marijuana is not legal in South Dakota at this time, so for what
That
that's
is a
worth.
news flash.
And if I could just add very quickly, and I really appreciate the difficulty that the planning department has in assessing these applications. But I know that you've approved one on the consent calendar today where there was another high-rise apartment building well within visibility of a location that was seeking a cannabis dispensary license, or a CUP, and you approved that today. It was item number 19. And if you look at the pictures, you can see the apartment not far behind. Now, I'll grant you there's some different buffering with trees and stuff. We don't have trees necessarily between us and this apartment building, but again, we're offering to change the location of the front door, to put it on the other side of the building so that there should be very, very little interaction, if any, between customers of a medical cannabis dispensary, which, by the way, you have to have a prescription card to even get in the door. So it's not like there's a lot of foot traffic that's going to be going into these businesses. And so for those reasons, we believe that it's an exception that merits approval.
All right, Mike Gallagher.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess one reason why I do like this location is it's not near the other ones. Yeah. Different spot, it's farther, different part of town, so it kind of opens things up a little bit. So I kind of agree with what Mr. Tellinghusen just said about the apartment being right next door. That's kind of a moot point, because there was an apartment really next door to the other one, just happened to have a garage between it. So from that point of view, it means it's away from all the other ones. That's why I would support this one. Thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually use this one location quite a bit. I would agree in one sense is that it says it right on the door on this side of the building. This is, for a pharmacy, and if we're talking about trying to identify medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, I mean, this is a good sign that if medical marijuana is sold inside this building. Now, as far as limiting it to the signage to the other side of the building or access to medical marijuana, I think it's a very good compromise in that, the owner is respecting that the residents in that building not to be, at least, it won't see the advertisement, should not see the foot traffic that goes in and out of the front side of the building, which is also for the convenience store and for the purchase of gasoline. It is a different location in the sense that most of the medical facilities, I mean, there's quite a few medical facilities on this side of town. So again, to me, this is the kind of location where we would want medical marijuana. But so I'm also in favor of this today.
I'm going to jump in since there's a break in requests and just echo what Vince and Mike said. I feel like that this is comparable to other sites, and I really appreciate all the homework the city's done on it. But this one, I don't agree with the recommendation. Mike Quasney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo what was just said. It's probably the one location that's probably ideal with all the medical facilities right there. It's the one that's closest to medical facilities, and it's a tough one. I like the city spent a lot of time. There's a map that we refer to, and it has outlined where they should or should not be. Now, you're on the other side, you're in the red, just so you know. And we like to stick with the staff. They do a lot of hard work to make this happen. We're talking about a medical marijuana and a prescription. And at one time, my thought was that actually pharmacists should probably be the ones taking care of medical marijuana. That was my feeling, but that's not where it went. So that's just a personal opinion. I guess this is probably an ideal location. I'm struggling with this one, so.
Karen?
Thank you. My question, I guess, is if we're going to kind of go for this idea, I don't mind the location as far as being on a major thoroughfare. I agree with the staff on the fact that the people from the high-rise would sit, they'd be outside in their neighborhood. It's right next door, and if our regulations don't want us to do that, the way we've submitted our requests, I like the idea of moving the location to the other side of the street. That way, it would not be right in their face, kind of. But I'm trying to figure out is how you do that. I'm trying to look at the site plan and how you propose that. If you move the door to the medical marijuana to the Mount Rushmore Road site, how does that work compared to your pharmacy? You're going to keep the pharmacy and figure out a way to put the other part in there? I'm just not sure how that works.
Mr. Tellinghusen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we'll need to redraw our plans. It's going to require an entrance over, I'm not very good at this, over here instead of over here. And so we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. The footprint of the building will essentially stay the same, but we'll just flip the entrance to the other side of the building.
And you'll keep the pharmacy where it's at?
Well, the pharmacy itself will go away.
Okay.
It will be replaced by the medical cannabis dispensary or pharmacy, however you want to call it. But the entrance to that area of what's now the pharmacy will come from the west as opposed to from the east.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize you were getting rid of the pharmacy itself, so, okay.
Mike Kwasny?
There's another part of me that has a concern that I guess we take the entrance of that building and we take it away from the senior people that, as we get older, we hope that we get wiser. And we're putting it on the front of the building where young people with gas station are going to be going to it. So I guess it's, although the young people are going to be there anyhow, I'm almost of the feeling that we should leave it on the backside and not have it where it's so visible to those that are filling up with gas. It'd be our youth and so forth. So I don't know.
Well, I don't have any other commissioners up. Is anybody ready to make a motion? See what flies, or are we gonna? Mr. Tellinghusen?
May I respond to Mr. Kwasny's comment?
Sure.
Obviously, if we don't have to move the door, we'd be just fine with that, too. And I would just make a quick, point something out very quickly. If you're concerned about residents from the apartment building being out on their green space, there's a fence between this property and the apartment property that has an opaque, I don't know what you call them, but it makes visibility almost impossible. So when they're down on ground level, even though they may be relatively close, they won't be able to see the front of the pharmacy, whether it's a pharmacy or a dispensary pharmacy.
Rachel?
I think that, the opaque fence, kind of makes it similar to one of the other ones we considered, where it was next to housing, but there was some kind of separation. And so based on that, I'm going to make a motion to approve this with staff stipulations.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, not with staff stipulations because you denied it.
Well, we actually do have some stipulations that if you are going to approve this, it's the standard stipulations that are attached with all of the other conditional use permits that were approved today.
Okay, I think I'm getting
They're
that.
called hip pocket stipulations that we bring to these meetings on denied items, so that if you choose to take action, it still maintains the standard stipulations that you would apply to any other medical cannabis dispensary.
And I'm sorry, what did you call this?
Sure, he gets
Hip pocket.
Hip pocket. Oh, okay.
pocket.
Could
All
you
right.
share this with the applicant quickly? And
Mr. Chair, these are the standard stipulations that you folks have read numerous times. Do you want them put on the overhead?
that would be a great way to do it.
There you
But
go,
I'm
Sarah.
assuming they're similar to what this same applicant
Every one of
had
them.
at Elderberry and Canyon Lake Drive.
Sarah,
and
they would like
Discovery
them put
Circle.
on the overhead if you would, please.
Okay.
If I could just say,
Mr. Tellinghusen?
with the understanding that these are the same stipulations that have been imposed on all of the medical cannabis dispensaries, we have no objection to those. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll change my motion to say approve with the hip pocket stipulations that are standard for all the rest of the dispensaries.
All right.
Okay.
Rachel made the motion to approve item number 3621 UR 034 with the stipulations as passed out, 14 of them as put up on the overhead, which are the standard stipulations that have been part and parcel to the other applications today. Is there a second to that motion? Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. And Karen?
My question is the fact that staff has looked at this and determined that the necessary apartment next door is close enough to this area that triggers that people living in an area, whether it's single family or apartments, whatever it is, and that there was not sufficient buffer between the two. So if another applicant comes forward with the same thing and it's a single family house, are we going to still say, well, that's okay? I mean, that's my concern. The idea of moving the door to the Mount Rushmore side kept that away from my thoughts. And so the fact that we're just saying it's okay this way, to me, goes against what we've talked about for all the other applications and the ones in the future. So I probably won't support it, but I would support it if they moved the door.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, that's exactly where I'm at, Karen. I mean, because that was what Mr. Tillinghausen promised us, or told us that, you know, he had authorization to approve that, so, or consider it anyway. I think it makes sense in that, yes, the staff worked hard on this one, and I know, because again, that's my neighborhood. I get it. You know, there's a church right on the other, actually, there's a rectory right on the other side of that building, and then right on the other side of that is the cathedral, and of course, across Fifth Street is a school. And I know those children go from that school all the way over to that rectory area as well, in that church. So the staff had to really think hard on this one, and it wasn't just arbitrary for them to make the decision no, because we do have this plan to where we are trying to put in place and keep those green spaces green and the red spaces red. But in this situation, in this one only, is I can see the compromise, and it makes sense at this time.
Karen?
I'm going to make a substitute motion to approve this with the stipulations as all these pocket stipulations are, with the added stipulation that the door to the medical marijuana will be placed on the Mount Rushmore side.
Okay. Karen made a substitute motion to approve this item as, well, she stated that.
Yeah.
Moving the door, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. That is the end of our regular agenda, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you all for sticking with us. Vicki, any staff items today?
The only thing I wanted to mention is Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Believe it or not, we're a day away from a holiday. I want to thank all of the planning commissioners who took the time to look at this agenda, because this was a marathon one. And I also want to thank the staff. I don't think you guys realize, but we've lost another planner, Carl Bauer. So Kip, Kelly, and Sarah.
If you could take conversation to the hallway for the moment, we've got a few follow-on things.
So Kip, Kelly, and Sarah, Andrea, Kristen, and Rebel, we've got a staff that has dug deep, worked overtime to get all of these items covered. And I wanted to acknowledge it because it's been long days, hectic days, and for all of this going on, there are so many people walking in the door with so many questions about medical cannabis establishments that it's been like an ant farm. No one's complained. All I get is smiles. I've got long-range planners and transportation planners and special planners working on current planning, and everyone's getting it done. So I'm eternally grateful for the staff that I have and the dedication that they've shown, and you folks taking the time today to vet things as well as you did. It's exciting to know that the work that we do gets read and gets appreciated, and thank you for that.
I mean, without medical marijuana being added to our list, you guys would have your plate full with your current staffing. And you've gone over and above the call of duty, so thank you. Enjoy the holiday. Anybody have any? Oh, Mike Quasney.
I wanted to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody again also, and I do appreciate the staff and what time they put in, because it's amazing how much they help us as we go forward and how much we can accomplish because of all the homework that they do. They make our jobs much easier, and so we'd be absolutely wrong to not congratulate them, thank them, acknowledge all the work that they do, and we do appreciate it very much. So,
Rachel?
I'd like to echo that, and I hope that the City Council is listening about how understaffed staff is, how underpaid staff is. And it's not just about thank you, but maybe we should actually make their lives a little bit better, because I wouldn't work under the conditions that they work on. I would get a job somewhere else. That's just me. So I hope City Council is listening.
Karen?
I'm echoing that same comment. And just to know how long it took me to go through all these items and figure out where everything was, it took a long time just for me to read them. And so I appreciate all the hours that you guys spent, and I know how long that, I've been there kind of, and I know how long that takes, so I appreciate all the staff. Thank you.
All right. Who's got a motion to adjourn?
I do.
Karen.
Second.
All right.
Third.
Everybody seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.